Welcome to episode 4 of the Morning Brew with Hunter Drew. Today I've got my guest, Rugby, who I'm looking forward to sharing with the world. Rugby and I have gone back years. We've been to multiple 21 conventions together. He's a man inside the Fraternity of Excellence and a person who, to me, is always coming up with a new story or a new perspective that I've never considered. So to have him on the morning show is awesome because he sees things like on the other side of the thing that I'm looking at. So we bring two different perspectives to the same topic, and it brings a more well-rounded picture as to what's going on. So Rugby, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome. As with all shows, all morning brews, we've got our sponsor, which is Ground Shark Coffee. There's a link below. If you go to that link and put in TFA10, you'll save 10% off your order. So Rugby, do you drink coffee?
I do. I don't really do it as a hobby though. I mean, I usually do it when I'm shooting like a movie and there's coffee nearby.
It's funny you said a hobby. It kind of has become a hobby.
Yeah, water's my main jam.
I'd say water and coffee are the lifebloods for all who fast, especially the coffee because I feel like it suppresses the appetite, but definitely also gives you the go juice.
Mm-hmm.
So before we kick this off, this morning show obviously is the free range of topics of discussion. Now, before we went live, I was talking to Rugby about the Star Wars guy. He has no idea who he is. I'm going to run with it anyway, and he has no backdrop to what it is I'm talking about. So I'm going to share the screen real quick, and I'm going to show you something that I woke up to absolutely blowing up, which is unexpected on my end. So this guy, it's the Eric Butts. He's the guy who watched the trailer. He watched the Star Wars trailer live for the new one, which is supposed to be the last one, and he was like super emotional about it, super into it, if you will. He was crying. It was gross. It was a big display of emotional, like obviously the guy's invested in Star Wars, but it was like, he was nuts about it. And I didn't really comment. I didn't pick it up. I was like, this is kind of weird. I don't know why somebody would cry about a movie, but whatever, teach their own. But the fact that he recorded it and shared that with the world, it meant that maybe it wasn't as an intimate moment as it should have been, as much as it was him just trying to put on a display of appreciation. I don't know. What I do know is the other day he put out that, I took the advice and I went to the gym, but I did Zumba, and that's manly, right? And he talked about how he lost weight and his fiance's motivated for him. And I sat back, I was like, look, this guy has been getting slammed by the internet. Absolutely slammed. Like everybody's making fun of him. They're mocking him. Like it's bad. So when he shared that, I was like, look, this guy is running with it. There are people who, when they get bullied, if you will, on the internet, or the mob comes after them, it's funny that it's the people who are absolutely, even the liberals who are looking for, acceptance of all, they were smashing this guy for crying about it. And here he is. He's like, I've lost weight. So he's going to the gym. I've got a fiance. So he's probably having sex. He's like, I'm taking the advice of these guys. So he's totally running with it. So I'm rooting for this guy. And I wanted to bring that up because a lot of people, they were very quick to be like, oh, this guy, he's living in a basement. He's got all this wrong with him because he did make a weird video. Like the dude is a little odd. And I think later in that thread, he talks about twirling like Disney princesses. But I think it's interesting that an individual who does something that is totally not socially acceptable, and then everybody dives on him to make sure he knows that, kind of takes it, spins it, and then runs with it, making it a strength. I mean, his YouTube channel is blowing up. So shout out to the Eric Butts for as weird as that dude is, and for like the weird display of emotion that he brought to the table. At least he ran with. I think it's an example for others where if you get mocked, if you take it and turn it to a strength, you'll be better off because of it. Rugby, without any background, what do you have to say about that?
I'm reading his Twitter feed right now. It looks like Mark Hamill came out to support him, which is pretty awesome, actually.
Dude, it was wild. Like I'm looking at these people and like I didn't touch it. I was like, you know what? Let's see where this goes and how it's working out. But man, he was crucified. And I know on Good Friday that's probably not the proper term, but it's probably why the term came to my head.
Well, like, the thing about Star Wars is that it's arguably the biggest living franchise in the last since 1977. So I mean, I've seen some pretty diehard fans from different environments, and it looks like this guy got like some serious support from the actual film, which is awesome because even if people think he's crazy, I mean, he got like he got like the filmmaker support, which just makes it more legit for being attacked.
And think about the promotion. Like everybody's talking about Star Wars because everybody's talking about this guy crying about Star Wars. So sliding over, looking at, we got Jack Napier, we got Jonathan Olson, who from Alaska says, I just wanted to say, I love the Morning Brew talks, and I can't wait to watch when I wake up. Just wanted to show some support from Alaska. So we've got Alaska tuning in. We've got a whole 6 people watching right now. We're moving up, man.
Did you know Alaska has the only living Blockbuster left? There's only one left in Alaska because their broadband isn't as good as everywhere else.
It's amazing. It's like the last dinosaur.
Yeah.
It'll be wild when I talk to my kids and they're like, you used to go to a store to pick up a VHS or a Nintendo or whatever, a PlayStation game. Like, yeah, you had to rinse it out. You had to have a card. If you didn't have a card, you couldn't get the video. Like, what? Now you just click a few buttons on the TV and it pops up. You can download games right to the console.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet by James Cameron where he had like a Netflix quote where it said like you had to used to go to a video store to get like a VHS to watch Titanic that was like 3 hours long, and now you just push like a button and you stream it in like a second. So he's like, you kids, you guys are like,
we're becoming those guys.
You guys don't. Back when
back in my day, I had to go in my car. You know, they're gonna be like, well, mine, they just pick me up and bring me wherever I gotta go. You know, then our parents were like, oh, I had to walk uphill both ways. Like, man, it's like we're declining in action required to do the thing. Like, there's no process to getting a video anymore. It's just press a button.
Yeah.
That's actually, I think that's a problem with people in general, is there's so much instant gratification to everything that making a French press would be frustrating to someone who always uses a K-cup. They just want to put the pot in, press the button, boom, coffee. Like, what do you mean I've got to grind or heat up water? You know, that's not fun. That's not coffee.
Huh. I make coffee for others when I go to, like, temples and stuff, and I like making coffee, but sometimes no one drinks it, so I feel bad for making it because I try to use, like, really, like, good level coffee, not like the cheap stuff, but, like, the almost, like, a really good, like, Ethiopian coffee or something where it all started from. But that usually costs, like, $12 to $13 for, like, the whole canister. If I make like one brew,
one morning brew,
then and I'm the only one that like drinks it, I get anxious and nervous because I just wasted like $12 worth of coffee, or $6 or $4 or however much like a cup of coffee. I haven't done it with Ground Shark yet, so I guess that's a good thing.
So your birthday was recent. I just saw you open another card, so I'm going to bring it up. Did you find yourself reflecting on birthdays? You know, I don't know, existential question of, all right, I'm this age, did I check this or did I do this? Or when I'm the next year, what do I want to achieve?
Yeah, no, I was I got my my job kicked forward, and I was happy, actually, very happy. A funny story. So I got a job part-time working at an Indian restaurant to learn Hindi for my trip to India, and everyone in there speaks Spanish. So I showed up and I was just like, I showed up and I was trying to learn Hindi, and everyone was just talking to me in Spanish. And I was like, yeah, this is great.
So your Indian restaurant is teaching you Spanish very well.
Yeah, no, the food's great though, but it's frustrating because I'm just speaking Spanish. So I'm trying to learn how to process the food and eat it, and there's gonna be different bacteria and stuff. So either way, it's still a help, but it's still gonna be a great thing.
Now, so you brought up India, and that is definitely something I wanted to talk about this morning because people have no idea. When I talk about rugby having an amazing perspective, like I told him, he's like a muse. Like he'll come in and be like, hey, well, did you ever think about it like this? And it's always a different way than I think about it, which is awesome because I think that gives us all a more well-rounded picture if we were to engage and learn from others who see the world differently. Now, Rugby, you're going on a trip to India pretty soon where you're going to be doing a ridiculous run, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So before we get into the exact, and I'll let you, share that story, take your time, go for it, because it's an amazing journey. But today is Good Friday. This is a very religious holiday for many. Many will be fasting today. They'll be appreciating their time in the world, recognizing their religion and then the events that occurred. And for today, being their Good Friday or God Friday, or whatever, however you're going to look at it, it's a very spiritual day, and it's going to be a spiritual weekend for them. Now, we had a very lengthy discussion on God, religion, spirituality inside the Fraternity of Excellence, our last chat. Last night we were talking about Red Man Group and talking about how to perform and how that you have to develop yourself as a man on the entire trident of masculinity. So the mind, the body, and the spirit. So spirituality, beyond just religion, there's a more encompassing part of that in my mind is our connection with the entire world. Your trip, and whenever you talk about India, I feel has that vibe to it. It's something that's going to be you're going to remember this forever, not just because of where you're going and it's new, but because of what it is you're doing and what it is you're going to experience, not physically or mentally, but also spiritually. So with India, explain that trip and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And because there are people who will never know somebody that would do something like this.
Okay, I'm bringing up so I'm trying to figure out how to say this. So the I ran into this guy named Ed Webster. Hold on, let me pronounce his name right. I ran into this guy who climbed Everest back when I was born, almost like 2 months after I was born in the 80s, and Ed Webster.
He's on the Morning Brew. You got to get it right. This is going to be a big channel, big promotion for him.
Yeah,
we got 10 people watching right now.
So his name's Ed Webster. You can go to his website, edwebster.org. I would hang out with him a lot, and he was the first to free climb Everest on Avalanche Valley, and he also was the first to take a selfie, which is actually how he got a frostbite on his fingers way before Instagram. This was back in the 80s when it was cool to take photos of people on mountains with bare hands.
He got frostbite for taking a selfie?
Yeah, he was up on Everest, and he took a frostbite, and his fingers got frozen. But if you go to his website, edwebster.
We talk so much smack about these girls who like fall off walls, or like this one girl recently fell off like a building or something, trying to get the perfect selfie shot. And this guy's literally as high up as you can be trying to get the selfie shot and he gets frostbite because of it.
Yeah. No, but I don't think he was self-conscious about it. I just think he was trying to show the surface of the sun from the highest peak on Avalanche Valley. He wrote a book called Snow in the Kingdom, which inspired me. He also told me another story about how he climbed in Mongolia, but I don't think I'm allowed to say that one until he finishes his book. But anyways, if you go to his website, edwebster.org, he has a bunch of cool info about the whole trip. But when I was talking to him in person last year, one thing stood out to me, which is how he found the top of mountains very spiritual. So he actually never went up. He climbed Everest twice, and the second time he actually had a premonition to not actually finish the last 50 feet because he was told he was going to die. So he didn't actually go to the top because the top of mountains are very spiritual. But in the run I'm doing, I only have they're only giving me 15 minutes to go to each peak because the air is so thin up there. So I got really inspired by talking to Ed because Ed he got help from England. He actually had a crew of 5 people come with him, and one of the guys he was climbing with had pulmonary edema, and walked himself back down the mountain himself, which just mind boggled me because instead of actually having to ask for help, he's like, guys, I have a headache. I could die. I'm gonna just climb back down so I don't screw the climb for anybody else. And it's like giving up on a dream that takes a year to do and respecting the people around you because you know that they want to go to the top. So that was actually one of the biggest things I thought I got out of his talk, that it's possible to help others while confronting your ego, but it's also important to do it as a team in some dynamic. So I'm doing this with about 10 other people from around the world.
Now, what exactly is it you're doing?
It's a 300-mile run around different peaks.
When you say it, man, you say it so casually that it almost makes me step back. I'm like, wait, he did just say that, right? So a 300-mile run, you're hitting 5 mountain peaks in the process?
Yeah. For very. I'm trying to figure out a way to bring up a picture to put up in the chat. I don't know how to do it without. I don't want to get kicked off the chat, but I'm trying to figure out a way to just share an illustration.
Well, you can explain it. Who made up this race? How did this come about?
All right, so this started back in 2015 by a bunch of crazy people in India who found out that they could get other crazy people to pay them money to get permits to do these runs. The Hell Run Endurance, it's only been completed by like 8 people, and one of the guys has done it 3 times, and he's doing it again. I've been emailing him every morning to talk to him. He's up in Slovakia, so I share stories about my nervousness, and he sends me messages back about his style and what he does. he's actually thinner than I am, and there's no mountain peaks where he lives, so it's pretty concerning because he's just like, yeah, you got to just go all out, but you also got to remember that halfway through the elevation goes up almost by a lot, and it changes your. The hardest thing about the whole thing that we both agreed on is it's 120 hours. So um, the first cutoff is at 22 hours, and the second cutoff is at 50 hours. The third cutoff is at 85 hours, and the final cutoff is at 120 hours. So it's not the distance; it's the time frame. That's the hardest thing for everybody. So that's what I'm struggling with right now. Actually, is making sure I do all this in a good time frame. And um,
Now, when you were talking about Webster making it within 50 feet of the top of the peak, for you, if he got to the top, he could stay at the top, do his thing, and then get out of there. You have a very small window. It's because how thin it is in the air.
mm-hmm.
So how do you train for that? How do you get yourself as close to that? Are you going to higher elevations to train with the run? I mean, there are people, and that's why what I love about this show is we can talk about running as long as we want. It's my show. We can have the discussion. There's no need to move on. This is not Redman Group. It's not the Family Alpha YouTube. So feel free to elaborate on how you're training for this, because I'm interested, and I'm sure there are people out there watching who are like, holy shit, like who goes and runs in India? Like, how are you getting there? And like, do you have a a system for running this with people so you don't get like mugged or you don't get like lost off the trail? I mean, 300 miles is a long time, man.
Yeah, so I do have a system in place. I've been doing that for the last 3 weeks, actually. Uh, I'm getting there early to stabilize my body with the elevation, but it's about 6 miles on elevation gain. And the worst part is that it happens in the middle of it. So right when you think you're doing great, you're climbing about 6 miles. So yeah, that's a lot of climbing. Uh, so I'm hoping to go there and acclimatize myself 2 weeks before the run, and do small runs to build up my tolerance at that altitude. So I have a plan.
How early are you getting there? I'm trying to treat you like somebody I don't know. So, like I said, Rugby's inside the fraternity. So we've been talking about this. We've had several discussions, and he shared the planning and then the motivation and everything. So I'm trying not to do that because nobody else knows. So I don't want to assume that we all know what we're talking about. So how early are you going to get there before it kicks off? It doesn't kick off with a huge start line. Like there's a bunch of people and they say go with a gunshot.
There's probably going to be about 11 of us. It doesn't really have that many people come. That many people come out. I mean, there might be a lot of support crews that come out to help. I'm going to have a support crew with me, but it really helps that people with you so that they can help you not give up or not fall into despair, even if you want to not fall into despair yourself. So the people who usually finish bring their significant others so that they stay mentally clear in the whole run, and it's harder to give up and fall short. So that definitely seems to be a common theme, and the 8 people that have finished, they all have people they bring with them, which is actually making me really nervous right now because I've been asking people for the last 9 months, and everyone's been like, "No, dude, I got to work and stuff." So I'm just like, "Great."
How long total will you be over there?
A whole month.
So 30 days?
Mm-hmm.
30 days is a good number. You know what's another good number? 31. 31 DTM, baby. Shout out.
Yeah.
So I was looking at history of today to kind of plug into the middle of this. So on this day in 1764, the English Parliament banned the American colonies from printing paper money, which is just another step in the direction that we all know went down. And then in 1775, and I did not know this, today is the remembrance or the anniversary of when the American Revolution began as fighting broke out at Lexington, Massachusetts. So people love to talk about Concord and Lexington. This is a good day in American history. We're going into the warm months, and they're like, screw this. Let's do it. And to a good friend of mine, Samuel Thorpe, yes, I did bring up the American Revolution again. Now, back to your run. You've done multiple 100-mile runs. So do you think there's going to be any difference with regards to how your body performs with 300?
Yes, this one is probably going to be the most challenging thing in the world because in the middle of it, it's going to increase by 3 miles elevation wise. So it's gonna it's gonna be very difficult. It's gonna be sad too because I don't have anybody I usually run with coming along with me, which is I have to take care of my own logistics, which makes me really nervous because it means that I'm gonna have to get a watch and stuff and focus on these cutoffs. There's four major cutoffs: 22 hours, 50 hours, 85 hours, under 20 hours. The first cutoff is 70 miles in. The second cutoff is going to be when the elevation climbs to 3 miles, so it's going to skyrocket. And then there's two more cutoffs at 85 hours. So it's the two middle cutoffs that I'm gonna have my I'm gonna get psychologically challenged to the max because I mean it's not that I can't finish it; it's that these cutoffs are really intense because you're climbing elevation and the hours are actually getting shorter, not longer. So that's gonna be a kick in the balls. But I'll make it.
Of course you will. I mean, you don't have any other option.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's one of those things. You burn the ship, man. You showed up. You're there for a reason. You can't come back.
yeah, yeah. I have a picture. I don't know how to share it in the chat, but yeah, it's great. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's 7 different clamps, valleys. I'll be running through lakes. It's great. It's
Are you
just
going to record this? Or like maybe taking photos or documenting it?
I think I'll do a little of that. I'm really vertigo too, by the way, which is why I'm doing this. Is because I have a fear of heights. So this should be this should be a this should be interesting.
It's be perfect. So, fun fact: did you know that friend or foe, gorillas will groom their dead? A bunch of gorillas were walking through the woods, and their researchers are kind of monitoring and seeing what was going on, and they came across a giant silverback gorilla, which was dead. And all the gorillas found it. It wasn't from their troop. They had no idea who this gorilla was. They all circled it and started grooming the body to take care of it. That's wild. The paper doesn't say they were mourning this dead animal, but it was like they came together and recognized this is one of our own, and it passed, and they kind of paid their respect, which is insane. I try to make a point to bring up racism, animal rights, and animal information and history in every single one of these episodes. So we're checking the box of animals.
Yeah, the weird thing too about gorillas is that they can do sign language and stuff too, which is cool.
Is that gorillas or orangutans?
No, I think gorillas can actually do sign language. I might be mistaken, and there's some things I might just have read that in a science fiction book, but I think that gorillas can actually learn sign language. And I have a funny story about a gorilla. So my friend, he's a National Geographic photographer, and back in the early 2000s, he got a job working for National Geographic, and he was taking this photo shoot, and this gorilla saw his picture inside one of his cameras and ran up to him and like smashed his paws, his arms, like right in front of his camera because he thought he was being challenged because he saw the reflection of his eyes in the lens. So he like smashes his arms right in front of the guy with the camera, and then he turns around and walks backwards because he found out that the guy wasn't challenging his status in the tribe. And my friend still has the camera in his hand, but he's like shaking and sweating all over, and I'm pretty sure he went to the bathroom at the same time. But
Eloquently put.
There's this guy next to him that came up and said you're lucky he didn't kill you, and like he's just like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, the charge was meant to get you to fight back, and the moment you like dropped your body and stuff, you realized you weren't gonna fight him, so he turned around and walked away. But once he realized what he did, he was a lot more coy about the way he took pictures of gorillas, because if they see their eyes inside the camera, they think they're being challenged by another gorilla, so they put their hind legs up and they smash their chest and they charge you. And that's what happened to him. So he was.
You got all the guys online that like all they do is flex on the alpha beta. Unless you're willing to do that to every person who looks you in the eyes, nobody's going to be more alpha than the silverback gorilla. It will literally attack somebody who looks at it wrong.
Yeah, it's well, Yeah, it got tried to protect too. It's not just by itself. That's part of why it's very aggressive to people who are trying to like call it out, because it has it has women to protect. It has little ones. It's a family. It's not just a one person show. Sometimes there's up to 30 gorillas in one group. So you have to take that in consideration when you realize why they're being violent.
So I was tagged many times in a video because, and I think the video had something to do with patriarch. So because of the patriarch convention coming up, people thought of, me and what it was that we've been talking about recently. So they tagged me in this video of the silverbacks walking across a road, and you see the big dude come out and he stops in the middle, and like there's some cars coming down the road. He just kind of like looks at him, looks at his family, has them cross, just looking at these people while his family cross. Then he goes, and I'm like, man, that's exactly what I do when we cross the road. Like when we cross, I'll always go out first and I'll just grill whatever car is coming wherever. And I'm like, just eye contact, laser beams. I'm like, all right, Jackie, grab the kids. So they'll walk once it's safe. The kids will sprint across and Jackie will go across, and then I'll slowly go. So I do think there's something to say that we're all on the same playing field. We all have those animal instincts, whether you're a silverback, going out on all fours and just completely jacked and shredded, and you probably flip the car over, or me, who's kind of just hoping it doesn't hit you because there's no way I'm stopping a car. My beard might, but just standing there and flexing. I think that is a trait that if you see a man who's comfortable like leading a family, he will go out and do that. But if you see the guy who lets the kids go and then he walks across, that's a sign of, hey, he doesn't think he should be out there to make sure they're okay. And that might be a sign of the times where we're not gonna get attacked. I mean, we could, but we live in a very comfortable society, so we don't have to worry about those things. So maybe it's a lost strength. I don't know.
Nah, I think it's instinctual. I don't know. I think it's instinct. Sometimes I see fathers do some really cool things that are mainly based off instinct.
Hey, dad reflexes are real. That's a thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I can see that. I can see thought, or just like just checking up on very small things people overlook, like if there's any dangers that might come about, or just I don't know. There's definitely a spiritual component to it as well. So,
So the last thing on the animal side of the house is Cambodia's endangered river dolphins are at their highest population in 20 years. I strongly believe in the animal rights movement to a degree. There are some people who go a little insane about it. I'm not vegan or anything like that, but I do believe, in putting land conservation, who I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who began that, setting land aside because of the appreciating what was on it, whether it was the animals or whether it was the landscape, protecting it from being developed into houses and whatnot. So when you look at, these dolphins that are surviving, and I was talking on the last one about how rhinos are going extinct. So my kids might not know what a rhino is, which is, good on the zoos that are saving them and rehabilitating, because they'd have been wiped out without that kind of recognition. So we do need to do our part in helping keep some of these animals alive, I think, going forward. If it's a preventable, extinction, why not go for it? Now, if it means humans are going to die or this animal is going to die, sure, kill the animal. I want humans to live. But, river dolphins being hunted, just stop hunting the dolphins and find something else to eat. There are other options. So good on Cambodia for making that happen.
I'm glad to hear that. Dolphins are really spiritual creatures. I mean, they also pair bond for life and they mate, but they also can use sonar to check women's C-sections and stuff before they give childbirth. So they're pretty sensitive to a lot of human needs.
So that was Cambodian river dolphins. When you talk about like porpoises and dolphins of the ocean, they are so intelligent. It is insane. Like they will have sex for fun. They will kidnap other people. They will blow O-rings out of their thing, and then they'll swim through it. So like they play, dude. Like, the things they do. You're like, wow. Like whether it's as bad as like kidnapping another thing just to destroy it, or whether it's fucking like, pair bonding for life. Like what?
What do you mean kidnap?
Dude, they'll like steal other dolphins from their pods, and like you're with us now, like you're one of ours.
Oh, okay. I just have like a picture of someone swimming and then just get like sucked underwater and like
Dolphins got them held up at knife point. You're coming with me. All right. So we touched on animals. Now we're going to touch on racism. So the Yankees, they had Kate Smith who sang God Bless America since 2001 as their seventh inning stretch song. And then they found, or they discovered that she was also like super racist. Like she's made a bunch of like really racist songs and whatnot. So they removed her from singing that. Like they no longer gave her the honor of being the seventh inning stretch song deliverance. Now they've got the keyboard version. I think that's the right call. I think when you find people who are doing or saying certain things that are not aligned with your values, that's where you hit them. You don't hold a giant protest. You don't flip out. You just, hey, we're no longer associating with you. We're going to remove. And it's not like it was taken out of context. It was very much in context. So I think we're in a spot where people's knee-jerk reaction is to like totally flip out and to totally, blow it into the stratosphere. We've got to have reparations. We've got to, demand that this person's held to justice. Well, they're a racist. I got it. But the best way to hit that person is to make them nothing, to completely remove them from what it is that is you're doing. So the Yankees totally removed this woman. So Kate Smith no longer exists in the Yankees world. Now, when people are facing situations like this, I agree that the best way to handle it is not to go overboard and send more attention to the person, but rather just nothing. You don't buy anything. You don't talk about them. You don't bring them up. You don't get anything that would support them in any way, and that you kind of just starve them by cutting out all those resources. What do you think?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about it. It's hard for me because I don't know, I stay away from news and social media more now than ever because sometimes a lot of it can be very negative. But as far as dealing with things that are uncomfortable, well, one thing that I learned in the Taoist tradition would be to oppose it to support. So anytime you support something, you feed it energy, and when you oppose it, you don't feed anything at all. So yeah, I agree with you on just cutting everything off.
So do you ever find it? So what I like about this is I also don't really watch the news. I'll kind of, when I'm on Twitter, see what's happening, what people are talking about just to see, but I don't really follow what's up. So when we do the morning show, I'm always looking at, all right, what's the history? What's trending? Let's talk about these things. And I'm like, man, there's a lot, like you said, a lot of bad things going on, but there's also a lot of good things, and there's a lot of positive out there. It's kind of like you have to become your own filter to make sure that you're getting the right content and you're not just getting lost on the focus of, holy shit, like shit's hitting the fan everywhere all the time, 24/7. It goes back to that fear mongering of these media outlets. I think it's important that we call that and balance it. Like my kids have no idea. We don't watch the news together, nothing like that. But I will talk to them about, hey, did you know that this happened? Did you know that? So it's kind of like I'm their filter.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were to sit and watch like MSNBC or something like that, they're like, wow, is it the apocalypse? Just scrolling through, I'm looking at student arrested for wrestling a fake alligator in the mall. Like, all right, cool. I can remember that. And this couple is celebrating their 80th wedding anniversary. Nice.
There you go. Yeah, that's the stuff I like to pay attention to.
A man pulls an iguana from his shirt, swings it by the tail before throwing it at the restaurant manager. That sounds like some Florida shit, man.
Poor iguana. Well, they do grow tails back, I think.
I think they do too.
Yeah.
All right, my last random fact. And this goes back to our point on selfies, which is a college student dies after falling off a cliff trying to pose for a photo. I think people are going to the extreme of what, the shot is worth. People are falling off buildings and clock towers and cliffs because they want to go to that next level. Like, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Look at how awesome it is. Look at the view that I was able to get. I think there's a difference between wanting to share, the beauty of the view and losing the beauty of the view for your own attention seeking behavior. Like when you're talking about India, you're probably going to have some photos. You're probably going to have a great story, but I doubt you're going to be leaning over a cliff trying to get that perfect selfie where, you look great, just to fall off and die, like that's not what it's about. It's not about showing, hey, look at how extreme I am. It's like, hey, look at the beauty of this thing. And I think there's a big difference. We need to start supporting those who are taking the less dangerous shot, if you will, or maybe less attention seeking shot.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I did do a camera shot over a bridge in North Carolina once. Um, yeah, and that was, I mean, that might have sort of my favorite heights too. So I thought that was, looking back, that was pretty dangerous because there wasn't really that much of a protection off the bridge. So I've probably done silly things like that myself. At least that's the most recent one I can think of. As far as having a camera and stuff, doing that where I'm going, these are actually mountains. So uh, I don't. I'm not saying I wouldn't take pictures, but that's gonna be the last thing on my mind. I mean, I would, like, I guess I could turn on my phone or, but just think about the logistics now. That wouldn't be something I would just. I mean, it's almost as if I'd rather have to focus on everything but that. But I can see how people would want to see like the massive vistas and views. So, uh, it's very dangerous because the thing is that the starting elevation where I'll be is over 1,000 feet. So if you compare that to like a U.S. hill, it's like the baseline of a pretty decent height, and there'll be streams and there might even be some bridges and stuff. So the bridges are probably gonna kick in my fear drive to not want to do anything, and I'm sure they would make for a great photo. But if you're climbing over a bridge that's already 1,000 feet up in the air, it, it's gonna be pretty intense. So, I mean, yeah, part of it is for me to deal with vertigo, and another part is for me to stay with it. So, uh, it's a it's important to confront fears and stuff, but it's also, social media makes everything broadcast. So it's like, are you doing it because you want to show like advertisements or show like the I mean, I'll be taking pictures and stuff, but I don't think I'll be posting them on social media. I'll probably just be sharing them as messages and stuff to certain people because uh, I don't know. I don't even want the attention, but uh,
It's cool
that
to at the same time to share that. I mean, that's an amazing thing you're doing. And speaking of running, did you see the video? And this ties in perfectly to what you just said of the Marine vet who crawled. His legs gave out at the 22 mark, and he
yeah,
crawled to the finish line.
yeah,
And
that
so I saw some comments where people were like, "Oh, he only did this to get attention," and I was like, "How are we at that point, man? Like, how are we at the point where like that's the only like?" I don't believe that. I mean, the guy's running and he fell and he's running and he fell and he got tired of it and he was going to quit, but he's like, I can't quit. My three buddies are driving me on. I lost them and I'm here. And he's like, I've got all my limbs, I've got everything, I can still push, and they fuel me, because they're not here. So that's why I have to finish this. That was I was pumped up about it, and then I read those comments. I'm like, what the fuck? And then I'm like, now I start second guessing. I'm like, no, maybe, yes, no, did he not? And then you're like, fuck, what? Like, why can't good things be good? Am I not trusting this? So I believe the guy finished because he had to finish. But people saying like, "Oh, he did it for the attention," that's how you stand out. Now everybody is watching him, saying his name. He'll be on the news. So I'm like, well, fuck. Is that why he did it? I feel like a good thing was ruined for me.
Yeah, check out the Sion Welsh and Wendy and Graham finish, or was it? I'm trying to remember the dude. I was talking to him on YouTube about a year ago, but he crawled too. Because okay, so there's certain rules in running, like the Boston Marathon and Ironman, where anybody comes up to the marathon. So part of why the guy crawled, or I would crawl too, is because the moment someone helps you by touching you physically, there's a bylaw in the rules saying that you lose your ability to finish, like you're disqualified.
So
So
you get like
part
the
of why,
asterisk near your name, crossed the finish line, but did not complete alone.
pretty much, yeah. Well, or you finish, but it doesn't count as a full finish because someone like touched you to help you or something. So one of the politics of running or race management with insurance and stuff is that you have these rules of protection from the race people put it together because certain times to get a permit, like you can't allow people to wear headphones. It's one of those things that they like will insure your race, but you have to make sure that no one wears headphones so they can hear like the road and they can see cars, even though people still put headphones in and they're just like, screw that. You'll see that, but the reason why it's hard to get permits and to fund a race with insurance and police and all that stuff is because unless you get all these things pre-approved, they won't accept it officially unless you have all these rules inside the registrations. So it's like a contract for the race, so that if they get sued, they have like a bunch of insurance and they have a bunch of permits saying, look, these were our rules. They violated the rules. you can't sue us and stuff. So part of why it's popular in Ironmans, or at least in the Boston Marathon, because that's like the most popular marathon in the world, or the United States, is because no one's allowed to help you on the course. You have to do it yourself. So, I would crawl too if I was that guy. But the Boston Marathon is like the biggest marathon in the United States, not just for people in the military, but also because the Boston bombing and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, there's
Yeah, the
there's all
fraternity
that
work, as well as
around it.
yeah. So I think that may have had a part of it too. Not so much to glamorize the struggle, but I think it was just to pay respects to how difficult it can be for the average person. It's a race that you have to have. First, you have to pre-qualify. It's very competitive, and after you pre-qualify, if you look at the course, it's pretty intense course too. So it's something that's definitely it's prided upon when you run it, because you have a badge with it, you have a medal, and people respect just the fact that you finished or did it even once. So that definitely plays a part in wanting to finish the Boston Marathon. Also, it's very military and police oriented, because Boston has an insane police department, and in a good way and a bad way as well. It's just a little bit of both. But there's a lot of community involved in the Boston Marathon. The people come out, and the whole city supports it in their own way, because you run across the entire city of Boston. And there's pivotal routes like the infamous hill and all this other stuff. So I give the guy props. I mean, the problem is with the Boston Marathon is that because it's so popular, people are filming it, and when someone's crawling, it brings up attention and stuff. But I mean, I would crawl too, but I want people to film it. But it's kind of instinctual that people do that just because it seems inspiring. So
And it is. I mean, the dude,
so
hands and knees, he made it. I was just pissed. I'm like, why are we trying to taint this by saying he had ulterior motives? No, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt that he was driving on for those that he wanted to remember.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. Is I saw myself in that state too with one of the last runs I did, because when this vet that was both in the Army and the Marines was filming me, and I saw myself being very competitive, and it bothered me more than him, because I was just like, oh, crap, I'm being filmed right now, so now I'm self conscious about the way I'm moving, and it was interesting. I love the guy, but that was one of the first times I was exposed to the dark side of, like, people shooting you while you're doing something, and it
I think
changed
there's a
things.
term for that. I don't remember. I
It
think it's
changes.
observation bias or something like that, to where when you know
Yeah,
you're being watched, you change your behaviors.
yeah, I think it's healthy because it keeps you in check. But still, I saw myself being super, like, more, not just running with myself, but I was running with someone else, and I want to find a way to bring up those emotions coming out. There's a lot of jealousy, I think, that came up for me, because I saw myself competing more with the other person than with myself, and then I did something really funny at the end, which was, I think, my way of getting back at being filmed without knowing what to do about it. So I thought that was funny too. I'm not gonna say what I did, but I just I found it to be a necessity. It was like the anti thing with the Boston dude, where if, like, I would have known I was being filmed when I was crawling, I would try to crawl, like, behind everybody so that no one could see me cross the finish line.
Just to reverse that.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's that. I'll just give a hint of what I did right there, but it's hard. People have to realize that the Boston Marathon is, like, competitive, and people if you read the bylaws of almost every marathon, anytime someone even touches you for support, like give you water and holds your shoulder, the moment they touch you, you're disqualified. So part of why they're crawling is because no one is allowed to touch them. And if people ask them for help, if they say, "Hey, do you want like a ibuprofen or something?" If they find that you actually reached out to grab that, or if someone throws it at you and you grab that, that still disqualifies you. So you'll notice that they're looking on the ground usually to the finish line when they're crawling, because anything that they get outside those lines for support disqualifies them. There's so many things that disqualify them. So that's why it's so intensely focused on just crawling with your arms or legs, because
Yeah, nobody touch me. I'm good.
yeah,
I'll get there. Don't even look
yes,
at me.
yeah. Well, because the thing is that if someone accidentally reaches out and touches them, that disqualifies someone's entire run, because there was contact. It's crazy, but even if a stranger did that, you just kick someone out of the race. So it's not just the fact that it's competitive; it's that things people usually do to help someone suffering are counterintuitive in a run, because that makes the person running get kicked out. So it's its own monster, but that's for its own reasons too. Um, it's an intense thing, and I think I saw like a 5 second clip of that guy when I was walking by a CNN television station or something, and uh, I gave him props, man. That's ballsy, and it's important to experience that once in your life, at least to tell your grandkids, because when people bring up suffering, you're just like, yeah, well, I crawled across the finish line, so no bad your day is, but hey.
So recently, the Notre Dame Cathedral burned, and it felt to me like everybody was listening to a poem, like a sad poem. And we're all collectively in every language kind of just watching this thing burn and the spire falls. And it's like we all feel it.
Almost makes me want to show the painting my grandfather drew, but I don't know if I put my headphones down. I can get it and then
Yeah,
see if I can film it.
it's worth it. I've seen it and it is awesome. Now, for those who are still watching and can kind of hear the echo from Rugby's headphones, this drawing that he's about to show is made by his grandfather of the cathedral. So Rugby, actually, hold on. I can set the screen to stay on you. There you go. So that painting is by your grandfather, correct?
Yeah, he drew this by hand.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
You should back it up a little bit so we get the full. There you go.
Yeah, I was pretty I don't know, I was pretty devastated when I was that's something I actually pay attention to when the news happened, because I have a lot of experiences with cathedral. I mean, I actually free climbed a cathedral when I was about 10 with my father in another city in France, and I just went up to the roof, and I was going to do that with this one, but this one was under construction back in the 1996 era. But yeah,
So are you supposed to be climbing these churches? Like,
I probably just incriminated myself.
all right,
no, so what happened is that I came early in the morning, and the priest came down from the top of the scaffolding, and he left the door open. So I was like, I looked at my dad, and I kind of was just like, dude, let's go up. And my dad actually went up further than I did because I'm vertigo. So he actually went out to the scaffolding, and I just kind of like stuck behind the door. But I remember that because there's something very interesting about cathedrals. They're very big, but there's also lots of doorways and stuff that are really small. So when you go up them, it's like you're climbing, but you can't see how high you're climbing. Then when you open these vistas, you just realize you can see like all of the city and stuff. So that's important. A lot of the back of it is made out of wood, which is why I think it burned faster. And also, they didn't want to destroy uh, any of the other stuff with pumping water at it. So I think they just tried to keep it as wet as possible, and that's why it looks like they just watched it burn, even though they were.
well, they were trying to minimize the damage done. I mean, you don't want to throw the hoses through, that stained glass and everything.
Yeah,
that'd be a bad day. Make sure you don't drop that.
Oh, I'm not. I'm just.
Be very careful.
Yeah, it's
that is not what I want this show to be known for. The destruction of the second. Like, oh my god.
Well, like the thing is that those cathedrals are over 1,000 years old, so a lot of their infrastructure is made out of cement and wood, not so much metal. Metal was actually a luxury that was introduced later in architecture. And the thing is, it took like 6 generations of people to die and to build like the buttresses and stuff, which actually got people out of the Middle Ages. It was the buttresses and cathedrals. And that's what created the Renaissance in an architecture way. It was the flying buttresses and cathedrals because it provided work, and it provided all the things we have in schools, like the PhD, the master's degree, the bachelor's. That all comes from like the masonry and stuff back when they were building cathedrals, all the terms and stuff. So it's interesting to see how like cathedrals not only got people out of like a state of depression, but there was like a legacy involved with passing on your all your work to the next generation. So you're looking at like a piece of architecture that's not only been around for 9,900 years, about 900 years, but that is it's provided the livelihood for like almost 9 centuries of people that died and that were continuing on with the dream that was being presented to them. So it took a literal entire forest to build a cathedral, like I don't know, like 12 to 13 acres of land. And it's so fascinating because it's just like time, the amount of time something takes to mature and that work it takes to appreciate.
Absolutely. I mean, you go in there and you're like, this came from this land. It's like farmers, or we talk about the guys who homestead with their kids and whatnot. When they sit down to eat dinner, it's appreciated a little bit more because the work went into it and that you did the work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a yeah. I'm glad people poured out support. I haven't been paying attention much after what happened, but hopefully they have enough support to rebuild.
Well, I think they've got a shit ton of money. I think
not,
the issue is people are talking about how to redesign it, how to rebuild it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not the money that I'm bothered about. It's the amount of time it took to put those. I mean, there used to be like 600-foot paintings or 30-foot paint, not 600-foot, like 30 feet, 30-foot paintings on the sidewalls in the back rooms where it burned, and those were like huge. But those were painted over 800 years ago. So it's like trying to figure out how to recreate that feel that was, because the thing is that all that money really is going to do is just put like modern day equipment and stuff that could stop a fire like that from happening again. But that's not going to bring back the serenity of that sort of like holy energy from those paintings and those artifacts stuff.
Right. And so I also think it's a great wake up call for people because we're all born into the world and there are things that have been here much longer than us. So we just assume it's going to be there much longer after us. You're like, all right, the Statue of Liberty. I've never seen it. I love America. I love, the whole thing, the whole gift for, I believe it was France. I'm all for it. But what if something happened to that? Whether a storm hit it, hit by lightning, it's bombed, it catches on fire and it falls. We can't just assume these things are going to be here forever. We can't just assume that the things that are, they will continue on. That's just not how it works. So to see something like this happen, you're like, man, what else is around us that could disappear, that could be burned to the ground, that could be taken from our lives? I talk about the rhinos, for my kids, but my kids have also never seen the Statue of Liberty. The local historical places around my house, I want to bring my kids to go see those because they're not going to be here forever. I recently joined a VFW and I'm talking to all those guys. We got a lot of World War II veterans. Those guys are going to Korea, Vietnam. These opportunities to talk to these men who lived through these events, they're living history. And they're not going to be around forever. We need to capitalize on it and start taking actions today. They're going to allow us to ensure we don't have a life of regret saying, I wish I had done this or seen this before it toppled to the ground.
Yeah, definitely. And you can't preserve all that just with pictures and videos. You kind of have to experience a part of it, in person. I love elephants and rhinos, just animals in general. That
my French press and bubbling away.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I do cheetah conservation work. So
Rugby, man. You're always bringing something to the table. You say cheetah conservation work?
Yeah. So
is it because they're runners and you're a runner?
Yeah, well, yeah.
It makes sense.
I always thought it'd be cool to run with a cheetah and then just have like the cheetah turn around and be like, dude, catch up.
The cheetah's eating Cheetos.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they always purr with their mouth. It's cool. If you take a microphone and you put it up to their mouth, they're always purring because it's how they maintain their energy. But Belgian watchdogs are actually what keep them calm in groups. So I was doing a fundraiser back in December last year, and this girl walks up to a cheetah, and the cheetah is a girl, and the girl's about 7 or 8, and the cheetah gets up on her hind legs and looks at her like she's about to eat her, and the girl runs away, and her mother grabs her and runs, and I was just like, that was the coolest thing because the Belgian dog was like, stay, and the cheetah was just like, but she looks so tasty. But the thing about cheetahs though is that they're very fast, but they're not as strong as people think. They're very delicate and they have a very sensitive neck. So most cats have like an extra layer of muscle and fur that their parents bite into when they pick them up and stuff. And so do cheetahs. But the mothers have an 800-mile radius range to mate, and usually males stick together in a pack of 3 until they reach the age of 4 or 5 because it's harder for them to learn how to hunt. And mothers are used to seeing their young get killed a lot, so it's depressing. It's harder for them to recoup. But it's interesting. The hierarchy of cheetahs are actually females are stronger than males in the sense that they're more independent. Males have to stick together for longer, and they struggle to maintain their skills as soon as females do. Females mature quicker, and their radius to mate is about 800 miles. For males, it's about 400, so it's half the distance as females.
I wish I had Rugby on because he could not Rugby, Rollo on because he could probably explain this. Like, all right, and let me explain to you why this is. Like I guarantee he would have an answer.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's about 7,000 left in nature. They get hunted a lot. They're not. It's harder for them to maintain a population density than other creatures. So it's about $5,000 to take care of a cheetah every year. And there's if you go to the Cheetah Conservation website, there's different ways you can help. Lori, she runs the program out in Nairobi in Kenya. I like talking to her a lot because she named one of her first cheetahs she took care of Chewbacca. So I guess this ties it back to Star Wars.
There we go. We've come full circle. Chewie.
Yeah, so she's been doing work since the '70s, so it's been longer than I've been alive. But she's really passionate, and money's an issue, and uh, lots of lots of cheetahs get hunted, so it's like a trophy thing. So it's weird, but it's part of life to hunt things that look like they're dangerous and to keep them in a captive state.
So you're running a 300-mile race in India. You work with Cheetah Conservation.
Yeah.
I want to give the viewers one more fact about you, or let you rather give the fact. Talk to us about malaria.
That's what I'm doing right now. Or in the next few minutes, I have to head out and do some blood work back at Walter Reed. So there's 5 strands of malaria. One strand kills kids. Kids can develop immunities in 6-month time frames as a booster to their blood, which is why they don't actually have to take a pill when they're growing up. But what kills them is this one strand. It's a mosquito bite that essentially it gives them a fever so high that all their white blood cells lose the ability to fight back, and they just die, mainly out of exhaustion because they physically can't respond. Their bodies just don't know how to fight back anymore because it's pretty much it's like introducing the body to something very dangerous and not giving enough time to immunize itself. And I'm trying to find out the name of the strand. I don't off the top of my head. Let me see if I can Google it real quick.
So while you're looking that up, do you want to tell them the story that the FOE guys got to watch play out real time?
Well, what was that story?
In the hotel, well, you're sitting there and they're just eating your blood and you're just killing mosquitoes.
Oh yeah.
And people are getting quarantined.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this because I'm not sure if it's even classified. Well, no, it should be fine. I wasn't told I wasn't supposed to talk about it. So essentially, they introduced my body to the same mosquitoes, and when the mosquitoes were biting my arm, they kind of exploded. So I thought it was funny. So I brought that up, and people just looked at me like I was weird. And they take the mosquitoes and they open up their stomachs to see how the larva interacts with the blood, and it was pretty awesome because
if I have the FBI knocking on my shed door because we're talking about things we're not supposed to be talking about, I'm like, God damn it, the next morning brew is coming from my cell.
I'm trying to find out the name of the strand right now. I'll find out later when I get to the Walter Reed. But okay, I think it's the Plasmodium bottleneck. I think that's what that doesn't sound right. It sounds more like a specific. There's a specific strand, but I'm not sure that was the name of it. But
we don't have to get stuck on specifics. I think the overall story is the better.
So yeah. I'm going to do that right now after I get off here on the. So essentially, it's learning about mosquitoes. It's also learning about how to find the way the body can stress itself out long enough so that you can give a kid that's like 6 or 8 a booster, so that their body doesn't overwhelm itself with trying to find a way to, because you know what a fever is, right? Like when your kid has a fever, it's the body increasing the temperature so that it can burn out the. It's almost like leukemia and cancer. Essentially, it's stopping children from getting high fevers or people in general, by introducing something that provides the body with a baseline to fight back. So I'm in like the 3rd phase right now, and I don't know. I like going in there making jokes because sometimes, as much as think I'm good with needles, I get nervous, and sometimes I I just make jokes to deal with that nervousness. Because if you can imagine sitting in a room with like layered needles everywhere, you know, different gauges and stuff, and you're trying to stay calm, and someone's picking one up and saying, "Oh wait, no, not this one. Hold on a second. All right, this one." It's fun to make some sort of laughter come about, knowing that that's going to go inside your body, and yeah, I mean that's what I'll be doing in the next 2 hours, just making fun of nurses.
So do you have to get off now?
No, I don't have to get up now. I'm just
Okay.
saying that's like the first thing after this is to get ready and head out to deal with some smears and blood work. So
Awesome. Smears and blood work. Sounds like a band name.
Yeah, it could be a heavy metal band from the shed of a Rhode Island.
So we're rocking out. Smears and blood work. It's Good Friday, so I took the day off of work. So I'm going to run this one a little bit longer. I'll probably go till 6:15, 6:30.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not in a hurry.
All right, cool. Now, something I wanted to talk about, because it totally makes sense to follow up after mosquitoes and blood and all that, is Tiger Woods. He won the Masters. And so Mike Cain, who's been a guest on here, he's a man in the fraternity. You know, he brought up a really good point, which is his children. I just saw a picture of him hugging his boy. You know, so his children, they've never known champion Woods. You know, they've never known, you know, Tiger and unbeatable. You know, the Tiger that walked on the course. I almost said field. Walked on the course and just intimidated everybody. You know, we got to see that, but his kids were super young. All they've known is mugshot Tiger Woods, the mockery Tiger Woods, the insecure Tiger Woods. So for him to be on top and then for his kids to see that, that's their first time seeing their dad actually, you know, the way we remember him prior to all the shit he went through. I thought that was a pretty powerful statement because I didn't think about it that way until he brought it up.
Yeah, it's also, you know, I remember seeing a clip of his dreams when he was 7, and he still has 3 more Masters to beat his
Nicholas.
Yeah, and he wanted to do that, and I think that he's going to do it because he's 43, but I think it's possible for him to do it. But if you look at his chest and all the operations on his back and stuff, if you just like look at all the stuff he went through in the media with that lady friend, that his wife that smashed his car with his gloves, and all the drama and stuff. I mean, that's a really hard thing to come back from. Like, think about like an Oprah-esque like reality show where everyone's attacking you for being a horrible person, and like you're being accused of being immoral. And I mean, yeah, maybe you are too. But the point is that your whole career in something you're good at, like golf, is being attacked for things outside your own life, which is what we do as a culture too. But just it's annoying because you could be like a great performer in swimming, but if you get caught with weed like Michael Phelps in a car in Baltimore, then still, no matter how good you are at swimming, you're just like, you're a horrible person for having weed. Therefore, you know, we're taking away your sponsorships. That's the sort of stuff that happens in sports. So for Tiger, it was like a way for him to launch himself past the money part, the sponsorships, and just show that his own family, that he's not only able to lead, but that he just won something that mattered not only to him, but that his family can participate in as well, at least the family he loves and cares about. And that's a very masculine characteristic, in the sense that you take your failures and then you continue. So
I mean, it's over a decade, you know, and that played out on the national, global scale. So the whole world. I mean, I saw a picture of him. I guess I don't know if he won or lost, but he's walking off, and somebody had the mugshot, you know, right after that night where like he was just all jacked up and his face is all like messed up and he's just like a wreck. You know, that was on his t-shirt. So he's seeing this, a reminder everywhere he goes, you know, for him to continue for 11 years and then keep swinging and keep coming back. You know, it's like I tell the boys that I coach, you know, as long as we have a chance to swing, we have a chance to win. As long as we can take our bats and go out there, we have a chance to win the game. Last year, we went into the final inning. We were down 2 runs. I brought the boys in. They were disheartened. You know, they're down in the dumps. You know, here we are, backs against the wall. You know, the next 3 outs and the championship's over. We're down 2 runs. And I brought them in. I'm like, guys, listen, I've been saying it all year. And here's where you go out and you show the world that you're going to swing for the fences. As long as you have a chance to go out and swing, you can win at life. You can win this game. You know, so I was like, if we win or we lose, as long as you go down swinging, we're going to do all right. And we came back and we rallied and 0 outs. We loaded the bases and then started cranking them. And then, you know, we had our guy do his walk-off, won the championship. And I think the same thing applies to Tiger Woods. You know, as he just kept on swinging. He just kept showing up and it sucked and he was ridiculed. He was mocked. But each time he's inching closer to becoming what we saw, at the Masters. He's like, I'm back, and whether he never wins another one or he does, he got back. He got the last laugh.
I'm looking at a picture of this guy named Guillaume, who I keep calling because he's done the run. It's at the highest peak in the run, and he's smiling because which is why he didn't finish. But in this picture, he looks so happy at the highest peak. So I'm hoping to run with him a bit when I'm there. A lot of these people I send messages to, and Guillaume's in France, and Eric's up in Slovakia. So he's done it 3 times. He's completed it. But when he sends me like a message, it's 1 a.m. for me, and it's like 3 p.m. for him. But we've been swapping notes and stuff, and this is the first run where I think I'm going to be tested to my limits, because I'm not only going to be doing it by myself, but I'm going to be exposed to some serious differences in what I'm used to as far as elevation. So that's what is nerve-wracking is to me. But the good thing is that I'm prepared, and going back to Tiger Woods, like
I was like, how do we get onto this?
Sorry.
No, I'll take it. Just run with it.
I'm just reading pictures right now, or reading pictures of stuff. So Tiger Woods, he's a really interesting person as far as his decorum and composure. Because at 43, when you see him swing and stuff, he's still kicking, he's still swinging the ball at high speeds. But I don't know if it was just the surgeries or what, but it doesn't look like he's struggling with each swing. It just looks like he's practiced long enough so that he knows what he's doing. And there's something to say about staying in shape even in your late 40s. Because when you look at him, and you look at him 20 years ago, even when he was 23, the only thing that's really changed is his upper muscle mass, because it's gotten stronger, not weaker. So I don't know. I don't watch memes at all, or pay attention to what people wear when they're doing stuff on the sidelines. But in golf, the really annoying thing about golf is it's self-reporting, as well as you're in close proximities to other people. So I love golf. Is probably one of my favorite pastimes as well, that and archery. But golf is very personal, so when you have people attacking you in that personal space, it can be more of a victory to not have them come in to that center point of energy and stuff.
We have Jans in the chat. Steel Jans. He said the video of Tiger watching everyone say he was done and should retire with the big grin at the end. So I believe this is after the Masters. They've got him in a room. He's sitting there, and maybe a few days after, and he was watching a clip of everyone saying, "No, Tiger's never going to win another. He's all done." And like, it's just like a bunch of people saying pretty much the same thing. Tiger's washed up. It's never going to happen. And he just smile. Like, the smile gets bigger and bigger each time he hears the person saying it. And I don't think there's any better way to answer than to do. And this is one of the big points that Ryan and I agree on. Ryan Stone is that you can say all day you want to do this thing, but until you start going out and doing the thing, that's the only way you can accurately respond to haters. So like, oh, he's washed up. Oh, like he can say, no, I'm not. I got it. I'm going to come back. I'm going to make it. None of that mattered. All that mattered was that he went out, he performed, he won. That is how you respond to that.
Yeah. It's acting through your suffering. It's a pretty sincere form of flattery when you do something like when you win like the Masters, and someone's like, dude, you should retire. And you're kind of looking back like, that's my choice, and I'm not going to do that. I choose not to. It's hard to stand up to things that people impose on you, and they think that you should do and that you choose not to do. But then you show them the reason why you're not doing it later down the road. So it's like you see a report from like the late 2000s where they're just like, Tiger's been ostracized, Me Too'd, or whatever, and he comes back and he wins like the Masters. Or it's like winning an Academy Award and going off and making a video game, and then the film industry is just like, but I thought you were good at movies, and you're like, well, I'm into video games now. So it's like taking your whole industry and flipping it on itself by saying, I can choose to not do this anymore, but I'm going to do it because I'm just interested in doing it. And
it's on your terms.
Yeah. So it's like you're taking all the rule books, and then you're just like taking the rule book and you're writing your name in it and saying, okay, this is my new rule. There's a boating competition that does that. I forget the name of it. It's the oldest sport competition in the world. Anytime you win the sport, it's a boating race. I can't remember the name of it, but it's, I wish, hold on, I got to figure this out. I'm going to Google it. But anytime you win, you get to determine the rules for the next thing, and it's been going on for like 125 years. It's like the oldest official.
And then forever changing rules. The winner says, "All right, next time we're doing it this way."
Yeah, well, it's not just that. It's like once you win, you can add on the rules or you can take them out. So it's like you can change like the parameters of certain rules. I forget it. Competition.
All right, I'll let you search that. So while you're doing that, I wanted to show something. So these are my notes from yesterday's Redman group. You know, I like to have a flow. It's actually Donovan Sharp who inspired me to start laying out the show where I want to go. There you go. Is that from last night or this morning?
It's from this morning and last night.
All right. Here's my notes from the morning show. Whenever we do this show, I'm like, you know what? We'll find out where we're going when we get there. I have no idea. There's no schedule really. I've got a few topics and we've hit them. So did you find that race?
It could be called the Vendée Globe.
I'll let you keep reading, figure out what it is. You brought up archery.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
It could be called the ocean race. Here, let me think if it's the ocean race. All
right. You read, figure out if it is called the ocean race. I want to talk about archery. So I put out that I joined my local Beagle Club, which is the local gun organization. They also have a bunch of archery ranges. Jackie had a recurve bow, and the two kids, they both had compound bows. I didn't have anything. I've never been a bow hunter. I've never shot a bow. I would say I've shot maybe 20 times in my life. And it's because my dad brought me to the archery shoot because he's the one who sponsored me into the gun club. So I would go with him sometimes. It's called 3D archery, where you walk through the woods on a path and they've got these giant foam animals and you just shoot them at whatever distance. Well, I put it out there. I'm like, look, I'm bringing the family. I'm going to get them used to that. Eventually we'll do firearms as well. You know, we're just going to start doing that. So the kids are shooting, Jackie's shooting, and they are incredible. Like I'm good at a lot of things. I can just athlete my way through them, except for basketball and archery. Now, Jackie, she's like, she'll watch me do flips and climb and jump and run with the kids, playing baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever sport. But when it comes to archery, it's like I go full idiot. Like my body is so uncomfortable. I just don't know how to aim. It doesn't come naturally to me. And the same thing with basketball. I suck. I'm terrible at anything once I have the ball. Defense, I'm cool, whatever. But I put it out there, and then we went shooting. The kids loved it. Jackie loved it. I'm like, I'm on board. And there's a guy who reached out, and he's like, hey, man, I've got this PSE Stinger package. And he's like, I'm not using it. He's like, do you want it? I was like, what the fuck? I was like, all right, what's your PayPal? Like, yeah, that'd be cool. And he's like, no, it's for you. I want you to have it. He's like, somebody helped me out when I started, and I want to help you. It's amazing the community that we've built to where men just reach out to help other men. So today I'm going to pick that up, which is how I'm segueing this into that. I'm going to pick it up from the post office, and I'll have my first bow that was given to me by one of the men in the sphere, if you will, for nothing, just because he wanted it to be used. So you're going to see, I'm going to go out and start getting into archery. We bought Jackie a new one, so she has a compound bow now. So the kids and I were all going to go out and start diving into that. But there is something to it that has me hooked. And it's funny you said golf and archery, because it's kind of that element where it's the smallest things that make the biggest difference. Your drive that goes into the woods or lands in the fairway is like millimeters of how you hit the ball. The smallest change. In archery, like again, I'm awful at it. I want to get better, and I will get better. But it is not a natural thing for me. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the passion that you have for it.
Yeah, no, I've been doing archery for the last 4 or 5 years. It's been actually, yeah, I think I started back in late 2009. I gave my friend my bow that was given to me. So I've been going to mainly borrow bows more than having my own that I can take with me. So the archery range close to where I shoot has been under construction for the last 6 months. I hope it opens up before May, before I have to go. I leave at the end of May. So I haven't shot almost in a year at a range. It's been annoying. The funny fact is, the first time I shot, this kid was asking me how to shoot, and we were playing this game where we put a flag in the middle of we put a flag in the middle of a field, and we all get together at the end of the field and shoot the closest to the flag. And I was just telling the kid, like, just aim close to the flag and like hit, and I was just recklessly shooting. And the kid's like, "Wow, you must be really good." So then suddenly she started thinking I was awesome because I just made this random shot that actually hit the flag. Because in the middle of this field, it's like, I started laughing. I started laughing because I was just like, that was an accident.
But it worked. It was a well-timed accident.
Yeah. It was like, this is my first day. Like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. He's like, but you just hit the flag, and it was a great confidence booster. But at the same time, it just showed me how your form matters a lot when you're shooting in the air, and you're aiming, and it was pretty awesome. And yeah, ever since then, I've been going with a small group. There's about 10 or 5 of us that go there a lot, and yeah, I love going with those guys. We usually go out to get food and stuff afterwards, or I just sit down with them and talk while we're relaxing. If there's a large group of families that come, I give the families priority over the field and just sit down and enjoy the weather on a bench. Or there's also axe throwing there too, so you can pick up.
I just put that in the chat, man. Somebody said that dwarves they don't shoot bows.
Yeah, that's what inspired me, was because you have a beard and you're small.
Damn it! The axe throwing is too easy. I gotta start taking up shooting bows, hanging out the elves.
Well, like, the thing too is that in Tolkien's universe, there's a lot of weapons that fall into personalities. So in Tolkien's and his world, he wrote these weapons into his characters. So Aragorn's sword and anyways, so not get too off topic. Yeah, archery, it's a really good bonding experience too, because you can see how people focus on their breath and how they shoot. And doing Robin Hoods is one of the greatest things to see, like, a kid do that's like 14.
Is that when you rob, a rich kid with your bow? Give me money.
No, that's so what it is you shoot one arrow, and then everyone else is shooting arrows, and then you shoot your other arrow, you go through it. And then I was with this one kid, and I was shooting my arrow, and he shot through my arrow into his, and then I shot another one, and he shot through my old arrow and my new arrow, and then back into his old arrow. And I turned sideways looking at him. He's just like, "Wow, did you just see that?" So I shoot another one, and then he shoots through that new arrow back into his old arrow, and there's like 4 arrows compacted. All my arrows, because they cost like $16 a piece. They're all compacted.
You guys destroyed $100 worth of gear, just showing each other up.
Yeah, no. So I look at him, and he's just like, "Are those yours?" And I was like, "No, they're George's, because I borrowed my arrows from his." And he's just like, "Oops." I was just like,
destroyed somebody else's.
Yeah, it was bad though, but it was funny because he was a kid that went to like these private schools, and he just, he likes to shoot and stuff, and his family brings him out, and you just see how great he is at just having fun outside. And I thought that was awesome because he was happy when he was doing that stuff, just being outside doing something physical, and not like criticized behind the classroom. So I could see how it uplifted his spirits greatly to not only outdo me, but to just dominate the entire what's it called, the target was just like covered in his arrows, and all mine were just like crunched up and like ripped apart. So I'm sure there's a picture of that somewhere, and you'll just see this, like, this kid shooting, and I'm trying to shoot, and he's just like annihilating the target. It wasn't just mine too, though. He actually, one of the things we do is we put one arrow tangling down, and if people can shoot it, then they win like a free dinner or something. And I was mistakenly trying to shoot this thing, and he saw me, so he started thinking that where my arrows were going is what he should shoot. And I think that's what set me up to get my just losing 4 arrows, because he was just like, are we supposed to be shooting yours? I was like, no, you're supposed to be shooting the ones that are the one arrow that's moving sideways, not mine. And it's too late. The damage was done. So
I think there's an equalizer to it as well. So I think one of the reasons my son likes it is because my daughter is good at it. And normally he can just dominate her in anything physical. But something like shooting a gun or a bow, it kind of removes the physical aspect, and it goes to more the mental. Like, can you calm yourself down? Can you make the body position? So he's sitting there trying to keep up, and she's doing well. He's like, what the hell? She's catching up to me. I've got to do better. So they're having their little competition back and forth. But I think it's like the process. This goes back to that, instead of having a Keurig K-cup and you press one button, you grind the beans, you put the hot water, and then you use the French press. With archery, you're pulling it back, you're doing all this, you're using a lot more muscles than opposed to just sitting there holding the the handgun or sitting there holding the rifle, you know? So there's a much more process to archery than anything else. And it's more intimate. So when I look back at war, you know, when you're fighting somebody with bows and arrows and slings, that was a much more intimate battle than when you're standing back, you know, a few hundred yards and you're taking a shot with a rifle. Or you're the guy sitting in a little Connex box with your controller controlling the drone and just dropping bombs on people. You're so far removed that you kind of forget what's on the other end of the violence you're delivering. But with archery, I mean, you're right there. You've got to shoot this rod into their fucking heart, you know? Like, that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's my friend's a hunter, and he told me this interesting story. He's also the one who gave me the bow, where he actually got me to get my hunter's license and stuff, but then he left to North Carolina, so I haven't really done much with it. He told me this one story where there's this place close to where I live that allows you to hunt, and he was out hunting, and he was sitting up on this tree, and he shot this one deer, and he came down to collect it, but then this other deer showed up, so he was just like, oh, I can't waste this opportunity, so he shot that deer. And then, because we have a huge deer overpopulation here, so then he was trying to come down to get the second deer, and as he kept coming down from the tree, this third deer came up, so he shot the third deer, and by the time he came all the way down, there's a fourth deer, so he shot 4 deer in like 20 minutes, and it was a
holy shit, man. Is that real?
Yeah.
That's a true story?
Yeah. I gotta call him up, and now he used to be my old dance instructor too, which was awesome because we would talk about dancing. He's like, dude, this one spot to hunt was like the coolest place ever, and it was on this tree in this one spot where you were allowed to hunt. It was on this I don't know if they have the Isaac Walton League where you are. It's like a private
I don't know.
It's private land just for like shooting or just for archery or just for stuff like that. But they also give you permits to hunt on their land, so that, you know, if you show up, you know, you can't get arrested or anything for hunting. And so yeah, no. So he was able to get 4 deer, and he had enough venison to last him more than a year, because venison has higher protein than most animals. It's very protein rich. So if you want to feed like a family of 4 and you have venison, man, you can cook some really delicious meals if you like to eat meat.
That's one of the things too, man. Like, I want to get into hunting. My dad, I've never been hunting. My dad is a hunter. My uncles are hunters. And I just was like, what the hell, guys? Like, why would you? I want to be a part of this. So I'll be teaching myself or going out and having somebody, you know, show me the ropes the first time, obviously. But it's that aspect of, you know, eating what you kill. You know, I want us, when we have chili or when we have burgers, when we have whatever kind of meat, steaks, it's like, I earned this. I went out and I earned this for the family. You know, I took the shot. I came in, you know, this is, again, it goes back to like the garden conversation we had. You know, you appreciate that meal a little bit better when you know the work that went into it.
Yeah, it's also a sincere way to eat meat in general, because I think that if you care about the environment in a non-SGW way, methane is the highest toxin. Methane producing the meat is the highest thing that ruins the environment for the average American, but between our carbon that we put out, because the amount of carbon it takes to produce that and the amount of carbon it takes to consume it is way more than if you ate the meat that was local to you. So it's the meat distribution part that really screws up the environment. So if you stopped eating meat that wasn't killed by you would actually do more than having to plant a tree in comparison.
Do you mean that in the sense of transporting the meat to the stores and whatnot?
Not only that, but the methane to produce the meat that's going to get killed in like that tight space.
Yep.
It costs more for the environment than if you were to go hunt and feed your family with like a deer that could provide venison for 6 months to you and your family, because the protein density is so high that's localized to you. So hunting locally is better than buying meat at a grocery store, because you're supporting their first off, you're dealing with the violence face on, which is important, but also something else you're doing is you're not letting anybody else take on that suffering from what you're doing. So in the native sense, you're being responsible for what you're eating, but you're not imposing that violence on anybody else, like by having to die in a slaughterhouse or something. So I always found that to be ironic that people can say, yeah, you know, like, I'm willing to go out and eat meat, but I don't really care how it gets to my plate. And I mean, that part always bothered me. So
I agree.
I was talking to some guy yesterday that was cooking up 75 pounds of lamb. And I was just
Damn.
like, man, yeah, it was just like, that's a lot of lamb. But just in general, it's something to think about when you're consuming something that had to die to get to your plate, or just like, would you do that yourself to feed someone or to feed your family?
Right. I try to pass that to the kids too. Like, while we're eating, I try to like remind them, like, this doesn't magically appear. Like, money is being spent, work is being performed by somebody somewhere. You know, all the things that we have, someone made that, grew that, killed that. You know, it's one of those things where you can't be so far removed that your kids think, yeah, there's a meat store. It just shows up like, no, an animal died, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing about death too is that you kind of want to, how you bring, like, yesterday I was biking to help my friend build these tables. I think I shared a picture in the chat too. And this deer was on the side of the road, and I ran into 5 turkey vultures that were, because it got hit by a car.
Oh yeah. I
And
saw that, man, dude. That was wild.
yeah, so I get close enough to this deer because I think that when kids see things that get hit by cars, or just, you know, and they see things that are dead, it's like that could be your body, but your body's temporary as opposed to eternal. Because you become something beyond just your body. But that's like a whole different discussion in a way. But for me, seeing something like that, like the deer on the road, would be a great way to discuss death to a child and say, hey, like, you know, this could be me one day. Or the way Mustafa does it in The Lion King, where he's just like,
The circle
don't
of life.
go to the elephant graveyard. Yeah, graveyard, because it's like that hell that kids aren't prepared for with their maturity. And the elephant graveyard is like the where elephants go to die with their physical memories. So it's not to take the subject lightly, but it's to bring it up in a way that's respectful as well as relevant. So that those turkey vultures saw me come up, and their beaks are huge. Like when you see a turkey vulture's beak, they look small, but as you get closer, it's almost like the entire size of half your hand. So I was coming close, and there's this 2 turkey vultures above me, and there's like 3 at the body of the deer. And I was just trying to look at, you know, the deer died like 7 hours ago. So I showed up, and it was just being picked. First off, deer, their flesh is really muscle. So when you see their muscle just being bitten off, it's disconcerting because you're like, that's
Yeah. Oh my
that's
God.
that's so what's fascinating about vultures is that it, they're 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 very strong. Like their mouth and their body is just, it's they're almost elegantly destructive, because when they bite into something, they take a short bite and then they pull out, and then they have like a huge chunk of meat with them, and then they fly away to eat the meat. Then they come back and do it over again. So essentially what a vulture does is it picks through like the harshest things in the body and slowly just digests it. And there's 5 of them, and I got up to close 2 of them, and they just looked at me and they just showed me their beak, and I was like, I get the point, and I just backed away. And they just,
No
because
trouble here. Just get
yeah,
a photo.
yeah, because they were just like, you know, we don't really hunt things, but we'll still screw with you if you come close to this, because this is ours. Like we claim this meat. So it's weird to see that, like, nothing in nature is ever wasted, and when people waste their food or when they waste their stuff that they consume, to me it's a when I do that, because I've done that. I'm probably gonna do that twice today. I don't know. It's I don't intentionally do that, but it's like, if you eat something that you're not gonna finish, why would you overfill your plate?
Yeah.
It's part of the hunting thing, where when you hunt, the meat means something more to you, so that you're not gonna like pull out like 12 pounds of meat that you're not gonna finish in a whole table setting. You're gonna draw it out for the whole year and feed your family for the next 6 to 9 months, just with that meat that you killed in one hunt, if you're lucky enough to kill it. So it gives it life in the bodies of the people you care about. That's a lot of what the natives did when they would hunt the buffalo, is that they would pray ahead of time to thank the buffalo for being alive. And then when they would take the life of the buffalo, it was to transmute that love into the bodies of the people that could be supported by that buffalo. It wasn't to just like use the buffalo as a trophy that you could say, you know, I killed a buffalo. It was to respect the buffalo's life that it gave you. So that's another rant, I suppose, on respecting the food you process or you eat in your body, and providing to others as well.
Well,
Along
it's
with
that transference of energy. You know, it was one of the guys in FOE. I always try not to say their name because I never know if anybody wants to know who's in and not in. So one of the men in FOE said, you know, from ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's that cycle of you were a living thing, and then another living thing ate you, and you energize that thing, and now that thing's going to go forward, and your energy in that thing will be eaten by another thing, or you'll die, go to the ground will grow a tree, and now your energy went from this to that to the tree. You know, it's wild when you go big picture, and like if you're like have like some whiskey, or if you're like high, or if you're just like in a total like deep state and you let yourself like chill and go to that next level, it is insane that we're star matter. You know, it's just absolutely insane how the things that make us up and who we are were most likely something else at one point. And somehow, like, I wish like I could just like trace like the majority of my cells, like what were you before? You know, how far back do we go? That'd be awesome.
Well, you could technically take your blood, and I thought this was a cool thing. You could take your blood and you can you can see everything that's in your body at any given point. And I was telling my friend, because he's in the army actually. He just reached out to me 2 days ago to do a run with him at the end of the year, and I said yes because we used to volunteer at the same fire department together. And he's an awesome dude. So I was telling him, because he drinks alcohol, and I said, look, if you're gonna drink alcohol, have high pH water with you to rehydrate the body and get rid of the toxins, because alcohol hydrates. So every time people brings things up to me, I always just try to throw out little tidbits of how the body can heal and recoup from that. Like if you do drink alcohol, if you make tomato juice ahead of time the night before you go out to drink, if you do it homemade, the potassium in the tomato juice, it has to be homemade because the stuff you buy is just filled with sodium and sugar to such a high degree. But if you make it yourself, if you have it on the table when you come back from drinking and you drink it before you go to sleep, your brain's going to get rehydrated so you won't have a hangover, because hangovers are just dehydrated brain cells.
I thought there was more to that.
Well, I was just saying, because he was telling me how to prepare for it. I was telling you about turning off like your computers and your phone and putting them away from you. And I try I turn my phone black and white so that I don't have to be distracted by the pixels. And I also turn off the screen on my computer machine. So when I'm focusing on my rest, I try to get into a deep rhythm of rest. And then I told him to do the 5 Tibetans because it's a meditation that empowers the Kundalini. It's how you can power up your day without having to drink coffee. But if you do drink coffee, you can drink ground shark. But if you want to do it in a way that doesn't require having ground shark, you can look up the 5 Tibetans. It's a meditative experience that realigns the energy in your spinal cord, and then it shocks your body into being awake. So it's like free energy that's just aligned at the right moment.
Yeah.
Just like it skyrockets your energy level to such a really high level that you can just wake yourself up into being. It's just 5 things you do over and over again, but it energizes the hell out of your body. Like ground shark coffee.
And that's the thing, is understanding how to optimize your own body. I mean, the experience that people have, they're like, oh, I feel like shit. Well, change what you're doing. If you're physically feeling like shit, do something different physically. If you're mentally feeling like shit, do something different mentally. Mix up your habits, mix up what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, one way to get out of depression or social, I've had to learn this with myself over the last 20 years, is to do things that are hard, but to be around people to support you while they're difficult. So it's to challenge yourself so you're not comfortable, but it's to be around people to support you when you're not sure if you were making the right choice, because your entire mindset is being questioned by how hard it is. And in the book Atomic Habits, because I carry that with me to take notes, because it's one
That's
of
an
my favorite.
incredible book for anybody. That is
Yeah.
actually, I'll drop the link to that book down below. That book, we read it in the fraternity as a group.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And dude, great book.
Right. So the reason I like that book so much is because it's like you're hearing someone talk to you in a loving way, but they're still, because the DC New York example is one of my favorites in the book. But the point is that when the way that,
well, do you want to share it for those who haven't read? Do you want to explain that?
Okay, so it's essentially aligning your bearings so that you, as a plane, like if you tilt sideways too much, you can go from Washington D.C. or to New York to D.C., and that's the 300-mile difference. I'm bringing that up because I'm doing a 300-mile run, so it's like I start the run and I end up in like Pakistan, and
oh shit, we crossed the border, guys. Back up.
But that's another funny story about Ed Webster, because he actually climbed a mountain in Mongolia, and they had to pick him up in a helicopter because his friend broke his foot, and they had to fly into China because there was a thunderstorm. But I'm not supposed to be sharing a lot of that because it's his story. But anyways, if you ever meet Ed Webster, it's one of the greatest stories in the world, and I'd recommend anybody to call him at least and ask him to tell him, because it's so good. And hopefully, I tried to convince him to write a book about it. But going back to Atomic Habits, when you write the way Atomic Habits is written, and you talk to someone in that way, it makes them change quicker because you're not judging them or criticizing or condemning them. You're taking their weaknesses and you're amplifying them with your own. So your weaknesses might be different than somebody else's, but you bring those up before you wake up earlier, or eating sugar, or stop eating, or stop consuming anything, like stop consuming things that are bad for you. Well, yeah, but then if you don't replace that with something, it's hard to change. So if you introduce ways that you do it, it makes it easier for them to learn that they don't have to stay the same person that they're suffering as. They can transmute themselves into someone different. And that's important to do. But if you do it in a way that's judgmental, it's hard to keep that sense of stability, because you're just like, oh, I'm just being judged for, not having all my stuff cleaned up, or not dressing well enough, or, the list goes on, because it's harder to be a guy with criticisms than for a girl, because in a way the criticisms for a guy are based off his performance, and for a girl it's I don't know why I brought it up in that way. I guess just caring enough about someone so that they change, but they're changing just what they have control over, and then you don't take it beyond that. You demonstrate that sphere to them, and then you let them go to not continue on what's hurting or getting them to struggle with. You bring up those things diligently but politely, and then you get them to say, oh, okay, so this is what I have to stop doing to get to where I need to go. And I like the way it's written in the book, because it's not like you're being persecuted for having flaws.
It's being recognized. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you have this, whatever, whether it's good or bad, you have this thing, this is the thing, keep doing, and it's not good. You want to do better. Okay. Recognize you have this thing. Now let's change it to that thing. Let's do it a little differently to get different results.
Right. So my friend Ron told me this. If you can stay in the fire, the fire is the moment where you impulsively react to something. And Ron told me, because I told him about my issues. I got a whole list of flaws that I was going over with Ron, because as much as I journal, I overlook a lot of my own issues, and I need multiple feedback loops from people I love and care about, as opposed to just the world itself. But one of the things Ron pointed out to me was there's this thing where you stay in the fire, and the fire is that moment. And this goes back to Atomic Habits, because where plateau, the 1% rule follows, where all the work you've been doing to get to that plateau is pushing yourself forward into a transmuted state. And you can see this with my running too, which is funny, because I was sitting with Ron talking about this. But Ron told me about the fire, and the fire is where, when something comes up and it's extremely painful to deal with, and you're used to distracting yourself or to numbing yourself. In my case, it's numbing myself. But Ron pointed out, if you can remind yourself to stay through the fire, to let that experience burn and then go away, then no matter what your issues are with the repetitive experiences of things that just hurt you and don't help you, it eventually is going to change. But you have to stay with it. You can't escape it. You have to stay in the present moment of the fire. And it's not easy to do, because it's the moment you're struggling with one specific thing, whether it's being addicted to smoking or alcohol or numbing yourself. That would be me in my case. You have, like, just this morning, I just reminded myself to stay in the fire. I just said that as a mantra, and I did nothing. I was fine. It was painful, but I stopped my reactive behaviors. So the staying in the fire also provides you with feedback on how you let things go, but you let them through you, so that you don't resist the world, but you embrace it. But you let go of the things that aren't good for you. So staying present to the fire is being aware of what's going on, but not acting on the things that hurt you, but acknowledging the things that could hurt you and letting them go, as opposed to trying to hold on to them and make sense out of how they hurt you. So
Well, I think it also teaches you how to feel again. I mean, people are so used to running from the things. So you're talking about the fire, it being hot, but people are like, oh, I have a little bit of discomfort here. I got to get out of that. Yes, that's uncomfortable. This teaches you, no, it's okay to be uncomfortable. You find comfort in the discomfort.
Yeah, that too. Check out The Story to Build a Fire by Jack London. It's a great read. It's very short, but it's like a poem about just this. Yeah, I'm not sure if I cut you off.
No. I was going to say the same. I mean, so when and I think I have read that one. That's where, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but basically he finds himself in a tough spot and he has to build a fire, right?
Yeah, but it kind of centers around nature being the body and the body being nature, where most of because she doesn't think is protecting itself. But in this story, the man actually wins, because as much as he struggles with trying to maintain that fire, it's like his breath. He's finally able to acknowledge his own breath, and that's the feeling of existence. And then he lives. He moves forward, and it's a great read about not giving up, but it's gonna suck and it's gonna hurt a lot. But it's like that plateau point in the Atomic Habits, where once you reach that plateau, which you're not aware of, because that's not in your due diligence to know exactly when or how. But when it does happen, you're just gonna be like, oh, Well, that's why I did like those reps at the gym, or did 200 push-ups a day for the last 6 months, is because now that I'm being chased by a bear and I can actually climb a tree, all my friends are being eaten, and I'm just like, yay, I climbed a tree. Um, no, that's a horrible example, but more like doing something that's difficult that everyone else is suffering through, and you've suffered through it for so long that you do it for them, and you're providing selfless service so that no one gets eaten by a bear. Um, yeah,
I talk a lot about, not letting your friends or family experience preventable pain or die a preventable death because you prepared them for that moment the best you could by not beating around the bush and not avoiding the difficult subjects. And I think that one of the parts of, what it is that we're doing here and spreading the message is that, so we might have read a different story, because the story I read, the guy finds himself in a tough spot in the wild. He needs to build a fire, can't build the fire, and he dies. And I think, metaphorically, that's a good thing, because as I read it, I'm like, that's your weak version of you dying. That's the one who wants to numb. That person's dying. The person who wants to get away and avoid it, you're killing that person with a new person. The new person is the you that faces these things. And you keep killing off, the shitty versions of you, so that the strongest version can live and go forward and can spread that message. It can help those around. When you're, like I said, finding comfort in the discomfort, when you're going through the uncomfortable things, it's like you said a little bit ago, where they give the example of a plane that's in California. If it's pointed directly this way, to New York, and you shift it 3 feet, once you fly to the East Coast, you're now landing in DC. What is that, 300 miles? I don't even know the distance from New York to DC, but you're so far off course because of the little actions you took. Now, let's not think of it as one thing. It's the 50 things that you do. Make the little difference. Stop smoking as much. Start lifting a little more. Start running a little more. Start doing these little actions, and all of a sudden you're going to find yourself up here when you could have been down here. And by getting up here, you help bring other people up there.
yeah. Don't yeah. It's about 300 miles from New York to DC. But yeah, that's the idea, is to take on as much suffering as you can for the sake of loving other people without having for them to go through that. But I mean, I think of Shackleton, because Shackleton was an explorer, but he told his men all of them were going to get back alive, and he was the first person to explore the Arctic, and his ship was called the Endurance, which is very appropriate. But Shackleton, he said all of his men were going to get back alive, and no one believed him. And he got all of his men back alive because he refused to have any of them die. And it was cool because just by him saying that, it became like the word of God. So he was just like, all of you guys are going to get back alive. And everyone was losing faith because of how cold it was. And they're just like, oh, we're all going to die. We're all going to lose. And he's like, no, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it. And it's one of my favorite stories is that Chuck Palahniuk, he wrote a short fiction story about how one of his friends in Portland was drunk one night, and he's like, it would be great if someone built a castle in Portland. And the next day someone woke up and was like, dude, do you remember what you said last night? He's like, no, what did I say? He's like, you said you were going to build a castle. I was like, God damn it. Well, now I have to build a castle. So he spent like he spent like 8 years building this castle because he said he was going to do it, even though he was drunk, because he found that by just saying something out of your mouth, you're responsible for what that is. So you can't say, oh, I was just joking or I was drunk as an excuse to how you say things. Anytime you say something in his point of view, it's like the word of God. So he was saying it would be great to build a castle, and his friend brought that up to him, so he built a castle. He had to mortgage all of his stuff, but he ended up building a castle. And I thought that was awesome because it just showed how much integrity he had with every single word he ever said was so valuable that if he said it, you knew it was true. You didn't have to question what he said. It's just like, that's who he is. And I think the currency of that in today's culture is even more because of social media, because of technology and emails, and how often people aren't with their parents or their family directly when it comes to learning about life and death scenarios and spiritual topics and relationships and stuff like that. So it's a.
I think there's also something to be said for the aspect of getting the fix and the hit by when you say, I'm going to go do this thing. And then everybody's like, oh, awesome, try, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter if you did it or not, because you already got the satisfaction of saying you're going to do the thing. So whether you do it or not, you said it and you got some love. So I know there's the whole dopamine aspect to it, but just to strip away the science and hit it, just raw, you can't just say something and not actually follow through and do it. It's not the same. You're not going to get the same results, the same experience, none of that. And I found myself, there have been a few times where I've been like, oh, I want to go do this thing. And everybody's like, yeah. And I don't do it. And I'm like, well, fuck. Why did they not do it? I said I was going to do it. What good is my word if I don't follow through? So then you go back and you're like, all right, where did I fail? Why did I fail? All right, let's not do that again. And you try to make the changes. It's uncomfortable to see why you suck, but then you look at why you suck and you can fix it.
Yeah, I look at myself and I question how sincere I am about a lot of my struggles and recovery, and how I'm not sure if I'm being authentic when I'm going through something, or if I'm the same person when I get out of it. Because sometimes I think I have to hold on to perceptions of myself from the past, and those are things I have to change and move forward from. So I doubt my self identity. I doubt, is this really what I want out of life, or is this who I am? And I really admire critics or people who come after me and attack me head on and say this person's a fraud, or this person's just like totally making stuff up. Because then I realized I did say things that I didn't realize I was just spewing out, but they recollect that, so they call me out on it, and it's a really flattering thing to have people call you out on things you forget, because then you realize not only is your words really important, but that you're never not being, there's never really a place to escape the world, so you're always being watched, just like 100.
It's like they're holding you accountable. Like those
Yeah,
are your accountability partners.
yeah, and the cool thing too is it's like having a good running buddy, where people who really despise you, or when they criticize you, they're complimenting you in another way because they're paying close attention to details that you're overlooking. So it's like they're calling you out on things that you overlook in a way that's harsh, but at the same time that's reminding you of the things that you avoid, or the things that you're still struggling to bring up and change. So
Well,
it's
that's the
really,
beauty of it, is when they hit you with something, they're showing you where people view your weak spot is, if they're just trying to talk shit. And if they're genuine, saying, oh, you failed at this, you're like, all right, you are held accountable. All right, cool. I got to fix that thing because look, somebody noticed. I got to fix it. So you, instead of getting defensive, like, no, I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, all right, you're right. And people get so mad because they want you to go into like defense mode with your spear. You're like, no, that's wrong. You're like, oh, all right, yeah, I fucked up. I said I was going to do this thing. I didn't do it. Or I did something that way and I should have done it this way. People being humble enough to admit when they're wrong or when they failed it's insane. I think you just got to be like, all right, yeah, that happened. I failed. I'm a human being. That this is what we do. Let's get better. Let's not do it again. Repeat mistakes is the issue that I take.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is like when does it sink in to change and to learn? But to me, it's important to have those things experienced nonetheless, even if it really it's a painful process to, because this goes back to being in the center of the fire. And when people say hell is a hot place, because it's being present to all the things that you're doing to cause your own suffering, and it's being so present to that stuff that you realize you also can choose that there's more than two options. There's 4 to 7 to 12 options, and then you cut through those options through a decision to say, okay, I'm used to taking step 2, I'm going to step 7. It's a new option, and I might get a different outcome. And you're appreciating all the struggle along the way, so that you realize that you still have to make a choice. And once you realize you can make a choice, you have so much enthusiasm of being a better person, because now you realize, well, I remember making these mistakes, and now I've chosen to just never do that again.
Well, once you take the blinders off, once you open, instead of saying my way is the only way, like once you listen to your detractors, if you will, once you listen to that, you're like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. It's like the blinders fall off, and now you can see other paths. Like, oh, I could have gone left or right. And then when you start taking better actions, you're now physically, mentally, and spiritually able to do more things, which means more paths are open to you. Like somebody right now who has not been exercising and has been eating terribly, they can't go and run up, they can't do the run that rugby's doing. They can't go and climb the pole to see the view. You limit the path. You don't have that option because you've not prepared for it. You start taking those actions, and now there's 30 paths. You're like, all right, I'm smart enough to go down this path. I'm spiritually healthy enough to go down this path. I'm physically sound enough to go down that path. How high or low you go is up to you and the actions you've taken to that point.
Well, and one of the beautiful things that Ed Webster and me were talking about is it's always the mountain that reminds you of what's really going on. It's like when he was climbing, he had a premonition 50 feet before Everest, the top of the point, and he was climbing Avalanche Valley, which, by the way, he did it with a rope and without oxygen, and no one else did that before him. So he had like total kudos from the climbing community, because he was just taking it to a whole different level. But the thing that he got a premonition that said, don't go to the last 50 feet because you're gonna die. And he respected that calling, that voice, and he decided to come back down with his friend. Even though he came back up a second year to try to climb it, the second time he still had the same. That was that premonition. And if you read his book, if you go to Ed Webster's website, he has a book about all those experiences and the Sherpas that he climbed with. I think having a job as a Sherpa is the most sacred job in the world, because you take the physical baggage of people and you expose them to the stuff that they're still not dealing with, and you do it for less than $1 a day, and you still have
You
a
said a
family.
Sherpa?
A Sherpa, yeah, Sherpa. Sherpas to me are like the coolest profession ever. I would be. My idea of happiness is retiring as a Sherpa and just.
So I'm gonna show some ignorance. I think I know what a Sherpa is, but what exactly is a Sherpa?
A Sherpa is someone who climbs with you with all your gear when you're climbing or mountaineering.
Okay, that's
And
what I thought, but I didn't know if there was.
yeah,
That's what you do. You just help climbers, right? Like you kind of
right.
lead the way and show them the paths.
Yeah, but the cool thing about Sherpas is that they're so humble, and it's like anything that they're confronted with, they admit total vulnerability to. There's like no one has a fan page for a Sherpa, and there's a cool thing, and there's a reason for that. And they don't
That's
they,
such a good point.
they don't they don't broadcast their strengths. They only broadcast what their weaknesses are, and they don't do that as a form of like civility. They do it as a form of compassion, because just because they're really good at something doesn't mean anyone else should know about it. They don't see that they don't see a necessity to advertise their strengths, and it's almost all anti-social media. Like everything about being a Sherpa is about total self-composure, and there's no other profession I can think of that is built for you to be not only self-aware of yourself, but to be so compassionate to somebody else along the way. So that's one of my that's one of my I mean, that's why I love them so much, is because they do so much physical work, but they don't want recognition, not because it's not helpful, but because it changes the dynamic of why they're doing what they're doing. Because they're not interested in maybe some are like when Hillary went up Everest, his friend was playing on the radio and just making jokes. So maybe there is some of that stuff, but um, I'm probably gonna get flack for that. Some at least the ones I read about, which.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't think they'll see this show, so I don't think anybody's gonna catch on. We've got 7 people watching, which is fantastic. Thank you to those strong 7. You know,
I
but
can't.
when it comes to the Sherpa, I've often wondered, if I wasn't doing, if I got rid of everything we're doing online, no fraternity, no family alpha, nothing, I think I would become the Sherpa of me, and like the Sherpa of fatherhood, where you just do your thing and you lead your kids and you lead your family and nobody knows about it. Nobody has any clue that you coached the team and then you took care of the kids and you did this. And it's an interesting thing you brought up, because they're not doing it for that. So I look at myself, I'm like, all right, I keep sharing these stories of doing stuff with the kids and this pushing this message of be involved and make sure you take these changes and make sure you're giving them presents and all that stuff that I do. And I'm like, you have to ensure, and Jans and I have spoken about this, in that you're doing it not because you want to share that you wanted to do it, but that you would have done it anyway, and you just happen to share like, hey, I also did this. If the online ever becomes more important than the real world, you got to pull the plug. And I've made it a intentional focus on that none of the photo, like a lot of the things I do, I don't share because it's not for them, it's for the family. But also I share just enough so I can show them like, hey, this is what I mean by do this. And then all these dads are like, oh, well, I got to see the example. So you've got to like balance that. Now, obviously, it's different with Sherpa climbing mountains. There's no, unless you're talking to other climbers about how to teach them. But even then, I think that would be in person. So it's important that we all live a little bit Sherpa lifestyles in that. And like Steel James just said, you got to be cooler in real life. You got to be a little bit Sherpa in that you're not broadcasting everything you do to the world. You can share just enough to where if you're teaching somebody or you want to have an impact on that level, but not so that you're like, hey, look how fucking awesome I am, because that's just attention seeking and desperate.
Yeah, so it's I mean that can be that's what bothers me about uh the way I use the internet is, am I doing it because I want attention, or am I doing it just because I like to share things that I think are cool? Um I
I think the fact that you ask
I
yourself
just
the question though kind of shows you're on the right side of it, is that you're even thinking of that, because some people don't. Like you run to India, you'll probably have moments where you're like, am I sharing this? By sharing this photo, does it lose the spiritual connection you have with it? Once you share it, now are you saying, hey, look at this thing, instead of, hey, I had an intimate moment with this thing?
yeah, I'm trying to get a copy of Ed Webster's book. He has a great chapter about his I have to I have to ask him this in person again. He's probably down in Antarctica, which is why I can't get in touch with him. I haven't. I've been trying to message him because I'm nervous about the cold. So I was just asking him like, um, okay, so I'm trying to find his. Okay, so his book is called Snow in the Kingdom. My Storm Years on Everest. Uh,
Writing
he
that down. I think I
yeah,
bought every book you recommended, and Jackie's like, "You gotta stop buying these books. Spent like $300 on all this stuff." I'm like, "Yeah."
I'll send you.
Eventually, I'll read them all.
I'll send
What
you
was it
like
called? Snow.
Snow in the Kingdom. Uh, he uh he went back to do research on the Sherpas that helped him, and there's like a whole bunch of great stuff he talked about. I could talk about him in person, but Snow in the Kingdom is yeah, that's where all the stuff. I still got to get a physical copy because I've been, anyways. So essentially, the idea is when you're doing something to teach someone, if, in order to do it flawlessly and not hide anything that's important, you can't you can't be distracted by like anything other than that moment. So after this, check out the last scene and feel the film. If everyone can go watch the last scene and feel the dreams, it's like the greatest thing a father had ever seen because it's very simple, but the way it's shot is just in that moment. It's like that's all that matters. It's not the future, the past. It's just like this complete presence to wanting to be connected to just playing baseball, which is why I love the sport so much too. Where they're just playing catch in the middle of a field, and yet that's more meaningful than like 50 years of therapy because all it is just experiencing that one moment in life, and that there's nothing more to it. It's just that's that experience, and it's like it's I don't know. If I were to think of the greatest scene I've ever seen in a film, that would come close to like the top 5 scenes because it's just so simple. It's not there's no special effects. It's just like this one father saying, yeah, I wasn't around for a few years, but here I am, and the dude builds a field like a temple to say, look, like I built this to make you proud, and the father's just like, well, I'm here, and he's like, you just want to play ball, and it's like, yeah, sure, let's just throw.
Hmm.
So, but the way it's shot and the way it's said, and it's all just so great. I'm just a huge.
I don't know if I've ever seen that whole movie, and I'm gonna end up watching the final scene before I do end up seeing the whole movie because of this.
And instead, just watch the whole movie with your family. But when I think of like the epitome of film and how great it can be, that last scene just does it because it's not just simple, but it really conveys how all you have is your presence. So if that's all you give, that's all that is necessary. You don't need to have anything less or anything more. But if you're distracted by phones or computers, there's some part of you that isn't present.
Well,
So
it's interesting you say that it's not simple, but I think in our day and age, it is the simplicity which makes it great.
yeah,
simple is not bad. You know how people say like, "Oh, submission." The term a submissive woman is a weak woman. No, that's not what it means. So when you say it's a simple message, that doesn't mean it's not heavy, impactful, or important. It's in that simplicity. Sitting and while you're saying that, man, I'm picturing all the times I've sat and just played catch with my son, and we're not doing anything. You're just throwing a ball back and forth, but it's like poetry in motion. It's like in that moment you just feel everything and you're just there, and there's no what am I doing next, what have I done up to this point, where am I going, where am I coming from. It's no, we're just here, we just are. And in that moment there's a bond that it's or there were times where I sit and I watch my daughter draw. It doesn't have to be just an action like that. Just in that moment of sitting and watching her create, I get that same kind of feeling that you're talking about.
yeah, I think that's a necessity in being a father is just having that available to you as a weapon or as a tool to confront the distractions of the world and to just uh, be present with the worst parts of things and as well as the greatest parts of things, but not avoiding any of the things that just make you feel bad, but just knowing what to pay attention to so that you can center yourself and leading through the barrage of things that come about or that you're challenged with, being challenged with all these range of emotions like anger or resentment or jealousy and um, things that you haven't processed that force these up in your consciousness and that terrify you because you have to lead through these emotions now and you don't have the tools that you thought you did to challenge your way through them, and that's all being exposed to the whole world all at once. So it's a it's like you're seeing your performance deteriorate because of how unprepared you are to deal with anger or stress or just the challenges of being human. And there's something really humbling about that because kids bring that up by necessity. So it's you think you have this all figured out, and then suddenly it's just like, bam, now you don't. It's a really interesting gift because it's part of how we grow as individuals, but it's terrifying too because you're so terrified or like for me with heights, it's not that I'm afraid of heights, it's that I don't realize that I'm going to fall. So once I remind myself that I'm not going to fall, I can hang off the side of a cliff, not intentionally, but just like Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. I was climbing with my friend Charlie, and there's a part where there's a vertical ledge and there's 1,000-foot drop on both sides, and I had to lay down because I was sweating and I physically just couldn't move, and Charlie just looked at me over and I was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish. And there's only 12 feet left to get to the top, and Angel's Landing is right at the edge of Zion. You can see all these valley vista points. It's a beautiful place, but I couldn't get up, and all these people were coming down, and there's only like this one middle bar you hold for one people because there's only one trail, so it's like people from both sides have to push just past a little space to get across from each other, and there's like 1,000-foot drop, and I was just laying down because I didn't know what to do, and they were just like, dude, we got to move, and I started, like you bring up the guy crawling at the end of Boston Marathon. I started crawling without looking on both sides of the trail, and I just started like going inch by inch, and then I just like crawled my way up to the top. So it might have looked embarrassing because this was back in 2010, but
Back before it was cool to crawl.
yeah,
Like, I don't think the year matters.
but I was physically I stressed out and sweating, and I was a complete wreck, and I'm sure if you saw me, it would just be embarrassing and just weird. But I mean,
But you made it.
yeah, I mean, I held on to a tree and just breathed for a few minutes before trying to walk back down the other side. But yeah, it's like stuff like that. It's in hindsight, it's great to go through just because you realize that there's a reason why you're afraid, and you got to look at that reason and not overthink it, but really live it, like really embody what that fear is teaching you.
Well, you called it a challenge. And I think in our day and age, it definitely is a challenge to remove distraction and anything that's pulling you left or right and just immerse in the moment. And going back to the church and kind of spinning this back to that, the people that went to the church and didn't actually remove distractions, and it's kind of like you're playing catch at the church, but instead of a ball, the metaphorical ball, it's your brain. You're there, you're receiving the energy, you're looking at the glass, you're not distracted by what am I doing next? What are we having for lunch? Should I take a picture like this because I looked at, you get rid of all the distractions, just you and the church. So now later on, when that church burns, you're like, I had a moment and I appreciate that moment. I was there. I gave the energy. I received the energy. What a great, what a great memory that I'm able to hang on to for my whole life because I wasn't distracted. And I was able to really soak it in and take that and put it anywhere. A moment with a conversation with your father, before he passes, a conversation with your children, a conversation with just individuals, our conversation now. I'm not thinking, what do I have to do next? It's 7:02 in the morning. We're an hour past where I thought we were going to stop. It's just, hey, this is a great conversation. I'm not worried about where I'm going and coming from.
My in 2009, I went to go see my grandmother because she was in California, and I had a bunch of questions about my family dynamic and the way my family was set up, and I got to talk to her a lot, and she drove me around and she showed me where like my dad's first job was and like how the city used to look, and it was a way for me to learn how to love my father because I remembered how she provided details to me that I was never available to me. I couldn't ask for these details, like no one would tell me anything. It was just like these closed secrets everywhere. And she passed away like later that autumn, and I remember how relieving it was to hear her kind of break through the best she could about the way it was from his point of view, as opposed to me thinking that, you know, like life was so unfair for going through these experiences. She was humanizing all those experiences and why they were so important to go through at all. And it was really interesting because I had access to a story for me to forgive someone with, and it was the cool thing about the story too was that she gave me details about how worse it was off for him on like a violent to violent standpoint. So I violence at all. Someone knew how violence was exposed that was imputed on you in some capacity was was really relieving, and it was also heartbreaking too because I realized how, in a way, I was saved a lot of things could have been a lot worse. They always can be a lot worse, but knowing they could have been a lot worse is even it. It was a mixture between peace and tranquility because I I I didn't want to I didn't want to I didn't want to I didn't want to act against myself as much anymore, which means I wasn't trying to think self-destructive thoughts, even though I still have those even today. I wasn't interested in going after those or hurting myself in a context that was disrespectful to her legacy as well as my own. So,
Well, what did you
which,
also say that by doing so, you saved yourself regret? A lot of people, one of the biggest things I want to stress to them is, you don't want to have a life of regret. So you've got to take these actions and take these moments now. So you're not later on saying, oh, I wish I had spoken to this person, done that. You might have, if you had not had that moment and seen, the other side of the coin, if you will, you might not have understood yourself as well. And the only reason it happened is because you made the trip, you made the effort, and you don't have the regret of saying, I wish I had gone to see my grandmother. You say, I did see her and I learned.
yeah, I did learn. We got to share a lot of, like the first job my dad worked at, or where he used to run away from his dad when there's violent stuff going on, or I got like this huge map and framework of all these details that were never available to me, and I could put together a story of just what was really going on. And you know, to me, the thing about the church was that it represented a state of sanctuary. So I went back to watch the Disney version of The Hunchback because I remember how the pictures captivate me as a child. And that time where he picks up the girl, and this isn't to say like, I mean, you could say this is like the ultimate form of white knighting and saving like the deviant woman, but I just remember how powerful, even as a kid in my own state of affairs, how seeing this dude pick up this woman that was about to get burned and carrying her body into a spiritual temple and then screaming the word sanctuary just had like this resonation of freedom, because it was not the fact that she was holy or that she deserved to live. It was the fact that he did it because he could, and by holding up her body, it was like a symbol of the church itself, which was the body of his life, because he was deformed as a character, but he he treated her as an idea and less of a person, which is why he never ended up with her. But he was the bell ringer, so it was like his salvation was experiencing that power by demonstrating it to the crowd and saying, like, you won't kill her because she's not just a person to me. She's like a symbol, like the bells. And
Yep.
and he doesn't get the girl. It's a sad ending. He actually gets stabbed in the back by Frollo, and he dies by his two friends are with him while he's bleeding out and ringing the bells, because that's his last wish before he dies. And even Disney was like, that's just too harsh of an ending, which is funny because in the book it's actually a lot more depressing than the Disney film. But that's typical. But still, it's interesting to see how like the writer intentionally knew that the guy was never going to get the girl, but that he wanted to save her because he just wanted to demonstrate that the church itself was this it, it represented the salvation to this character who wasn't ever going to be human to everybody else, but he wanted her to be human enough to not die. So by holding up his body and Disney filming that scene where he grabs her from the stake and brings her up and screams like sanctuary, I was just like, it's heartbreaking because that's the last part of the whole church, the cathedral that's alive. It's that the two buttresses with the bells.
Yep.
So everything else is on fire, and then that one scene in the Disney film is just him picking up the girl and just screaming sanctuary, like you'll be saved even if you're going through hell. Like just bear with me for this one moment. And it's because of the bell tower, the thing, everything burning. I thought that was so resonant in 2019 because this was shot in 1996. But even today, that's like the last thing that remains. So to me, it's like Disney's married that tragedy with their
Dude, that's insane. And I forgot about that scene until you said it. That is, I remember as a kid, I was like, holy shit. But also
no.
when you look at it and like you went from the flames to the church, like the symbolism, it can't be ignored.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too about Frollo is that they didn't want to make him as a priest because this was before like the scandal of kids being molested. But what was fascinating to me was that he was a he was judgmental. And if you look at his song Hellfire, which they were going to ban from the film because they thought it was too intense, they actually told the filmmakers, the animators, to not animate Esmeralda's body without clothes on when he's looking in the fire of lust, which I thought was really fascinating because Disney's all about family entertainment. But Frollo was like this really mean spirited person. And if you look at his eyes, he has white eyelids, but usually the villains have green eyes, which is why Esmeralda's character has green eyes and not his. But I don't want to get too distracted, but I was just going to say that Frollo, he's this representation of always calling people out on stuff. And by the way, in the opening sequence, I didn't realize how brutal it was, but he kicks the woman in the face and kills her in an animated film. And I thought that was really weird as an
Dude,
adult.
I think I need to watch this again. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember any of this.
Okay. Anyways, in the opening sequence, it's this it's Clopin who's showing the story, and it cuts back to how Quasimodo was created, and you see his mother go to the church screaming for sanctuary, and then this guy comes up, grabs the baby, and kicks this woman in the face and kills her in a Disney film, and I was just like, wow. I didn't realize that happened. But I was just trying to reminisce about what happened in Paris, so I went back to watch that film. But there's another tidbit. If you pause the film, someone drew in a satellite on one of the houses, which I thought was funny. Um, but not to get too distracted from the sanctuary and the church as the body. Frollo is a judgmental human. I think out of all the Disney characters, I actually like him the most because he's so pure, or he's a judgmental person because he's the judge of Paris for the institute or the justice, whatever. But he in the song Hellfire, which is probably my favorite Disney thing that was made, because it really brings out that agonizing ritual of religion as well as presence, because he's screaming for help, but he has these desires and needs that he hasn't thought about for himself, and he's expecting that the church is going to save him, or that his God is going to save him, and that yet he turns around and he hurts people because he thinks that he's somehow entitled by God to do whatever he wants. Um, and I think that's great because Disney's all about family entertainment, but this really brings out like the worst part of people. Like when you look at his character, he's so harsh. He's so he's so mean spirited, and he's so self centered, and yet he really demonstrates the danger of power, because no one calls him out on his own stuff. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants, and that causes a lot of people hurt, because how do you fight back against a judge? And because in the 13th and 14th century there was no such thing as human rights. Like, all this stuff is relatively new to our society, but think about having this person tell you what to do, and there's who you challenge. Like, that's another reason why I think by grabbing the girl in the story and having him scream sanctuary, he's kind of telling like this judge who's in charge of his life to say, even if you can kill people because no one's going to call you out on it, this building as architecture represents like the state of God, and you're not beyond that, because it's going to last
This is
longer
bigger than you.
Yeah. So for me, it was like a great way to tell people, like, even if people hurt you, there's symbolisms that can take over and tell you that you're saved still, if they you know tell you, you're banned for life from ever going here, or you can't go here. The 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 ability to like use that architecture to say, like, okay, fine, well, if I'm stuck in this building, then it's the holiest building of all time, because it's where I am, so therefore that's where it is. And it's symbolistic to the body because Quasimodo's aware of his deficiencies and weaknesses, and Frollo he's totally up in his head about how great God is, but he still hurts people, even though he says he's one person and he's not. But in the song Hellfire, he's talking about how he's going to burn everything outside of himself to deal with his lust. And the reason why I'm bringing this up about what I told you about being present to that fire is to acknowledge it. So that's why I think it's the greatest thing Disney ever made, because it's just him screaming to the fire saying, I have this lust for this woman, but I'm not going to, if I act out on it, then it's against God's will, but I still want to do it. And you see it's a really dark song, because he's just talking about how he's going to burn all of Paris because he can't be with this woman. And it's weird, because when I saw it as an adult, I got a whole different interpretation as a kid. When I saw that as a kid, I was terrified because of those like hollow black faces and stuff. But in the film, it was bringing up how if you don't stay with the fire, you burn everything outside yourself because you can't process your own emotions. It was is symbolic about what happened with the story, and how he kills or he hurts people because he can't deal with his anger and rage, and his lack of owning up. He doesn't take responsibility for his flaws.
Right.
He says it's God's fault. Like, pretty much, he's just like, if I can't be with this woman, then that's God's problem. Or if I can't,
You made it this
so
way.
yeah. So it's agonizing because he's on his knees, like he's praying, and he's like, he's saying hellfire every other word, and then this guy interrupts in the middle of the song. This guy opens the door and says, "We couldn't find the gypsy woman." He's like, "Get out, you idiot!" Like, that's his first response in the middle of the song. And if you really think about it, he's insulting the guy while he's talking about his problems. Like, like, I don't know how to be with this woman. And then this guy opens the door in the middle of the scene or the song. And he's like, "Get out, you idiot!" And he's so harsh. And when you look at it, he's like this. He's like the only Disney villain that's dressed up as a human, and he's just like this this power hungry, sad sad. He's very sad because he can't burn that fire within himself before he has to burn everything else. So you see that as an animated story, which is really interesting, because when the cathedral started to burn, everybody that was around it wasn't trying to stop. It looked like they were just watching it, but when you really look at all the you really like, they didn't leave that building. It's like they were losing a part of their organs. Like, it was odd to see that people weren't screaming and they were holding their mouth in tears, but they weren't. It was like it was like a Burning Man event in the sense that they were all aware of what was going on at the very moment. But even the firefighters and the politicians, for those moments, they were just like, we're firefighters and we're politicians, but we need to be present with each other because, you know, a part of our heart's burning or a part of our city's burning. And that's one of the things about Quasi when he grabs Esmeralda from burning, where he picks her up and screams those words, because he's using that energy and that symbolism to represent choosing to stay with the fire, to not let it burn out of yourself, but to burn in yourself. And it's like it's so sincere that, to me, I think that it kind of represents, no matter how bad things get, you don't avoid them, but you consistently try to confront them, even if you just give up. Because I was thinking about suicide yesterday, not for myself, but because I dealt with it in my life. And one of the things someone told me once is that suicide is the ultimate form of self-criticism. And when you go back to the hunchback holding Esmeralda and saying, "Sanctuary, sanctuary," it's like, even though people don't appreciate his body and they don't appreciate him at all as a person, he's not criticizing himself because he knows they're going to do it for him. So instead, he just channels all that energy into saying, I can ring bells, and these bells are louder than your criticisms. And even if you allow this person to die, I can use these bells to save her just as much as they're saving me. And he's channeling all that energy all outside, um, while he's in the fire, because he's not acknowledging them. He's totally expressing them without having to reserve any of that. So that's why I think when he screams sanctuary, it means so much, because he's not hiding from wanting to save her, and he's not allowing himself to repress that need to feel like he had this love expressed to him, and he wanted to express it back, because he was so used to being neglected and abused and lied to by this dude who had no interest in being friendly with him. He was guilted into loving this guy because he was called out for killing the mother. Um, and
I love when people get over that wall of the fear that comes with judgment and the fear that comes with, you know, being ostracized from the group. You know, when you see like the really fat guy that's in the gym and he's getting after it, and like, you know, he's uncomfortable. He knows, you know, he's uncomfortable. He knows you're looking at him because he's huge, yet he's still out there going after it. It's almost as though people going through these issues, the only way for them to fix it and to get through that wall is to get over that fear and just face it. And you kind of accept, like you said with Quasimodo, look, you guys are going to talk smack about me anyway because I'm all jacked up. So whatever, I'm just going to run with it. That's already going to happen. So I might as well just continue to do my thing and not try to hide from it so you won't say anything. You know, I remember one of the scenes where he's out there and they start throwing like the vegetables and shit at him. I remember as a kid, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this dude is like literally like trying to do the right thing and you guys are all fucking assholes about it and there's no need for it. And it's one of those things where you see people shaming others who are trying to do the right thing. You know, when they were trying to shame, like back to the Star Wars guy, like, okay, you're shaming the guy and he ran with it. Cool. You know, that worked out for him. He's going forward. He's trying to actually improve his life. It seems. I don't really know the guy, just from what I've been seeing. But, you know, when people go after it, they're trying to improve. And I'll always stand in that guy's corner. The fat guy at the gym, you know, the fat girl at the gym, all these people who are trying to do, like the guy who's awkward, the dude who's like, I wish Nick Lowry was on, because it'd be like the first time somebody walks onto a jujitsu mat, you know, you're going to look like an idiot. Well, that's fine. You always look stupid in the beginning. People are going to talk shit no matter what. So you might as well go out there, look stupid, and then get better.
Yeah, I was thinking of Bruce Lee when you said that, because I'm at the Eric Butts Twitter page, and I see the Green Hornet, and Bruce Lee used to be the Green Hornet in the first origination of the show. And one thing Bruce Lee said in one of his interviews was, because Bruce Lee was literally, his physical metrics are the same as mine, which was odd to me, because he could punch through 140-pound bags and break them just with his fists, because he was so disciplined in Wuchang, which he learned from IP Man, who was another man I appreciate beyond respect, because IP Man stood up to a nation, but he was also extremely humble with his violence. He never exuberated his violence. He just channeled it to demonstrate the art form. But Bruce Lee said something about, he said, if you do something, and I almost tempted to look it up because I don't want to misquote Bruce Lee out of all people, but
He'll come back, man.
yeah, no, but Bruce Lee said something along the lines of, you know, like this goes back to going to the gym and seeing people who like it's like, why would you be here? Because you're like totally obese, and like how dare you come to my sacred space and choose to change yourself? Like what gives you the right to be such a great person, just as great as I am? Like you're supposed to be someone I make fun of, not someone I have to work with. Um, uh, it's actually really interesting to see people that actually try to get better, that are out of shape, challenge the stereotypes of what health is, because it's like you're supposed to be put in that role I gave you, not the one that you want to create
Yeah.
for
How
yourself.
dare you? You're the funny
Yes.
fat guy. You don't get to be
Yeah.
jacked. You don't get to take ownership of your health.
Yeah. So it's weird because even like the most whatever people you want to call them, we all put each other in these like boxes. Like I'm in a box right now at the bottom of the screen, but it's weird because psychologically, it's like we don't give each other permission to just change themselves or just be someone totally different that they want to be, and that's kind of disheartening because when you see people struggling at the gym, like in my case, I remember I was at the gym once and I ran into this guy. We're still friends today. I think his name is Eric, and he had like he was like 300 pounds. And I was messaging him over Christmas one time, and I ended up at the gym and I saw him walk in, and he was just like, he used to be 300 pounds and now he was down to 200 pounds. And then I saw him like 3 weeks ago and now he's down to like 200 pounds or like 100 pounds. And he's lost like 200 pounds of weight and it's all muscle now. And I just still I high five him and I arm wrestle him and stuff. But if you were to see how this guy was and how he is now, it's like he's a different person. But I'm not holding him into the box. I don't. Hopefully, I'm not putting him in like this box. But it's great to see his progress because he's working harder than I am, and he has like this willingness to change. And when he's sitting down drinking water, and I'm exhausted, and I'm drinking water, he has this like sense of I have to do this to be someone different because I know that if I'm not, I'm going to die, and that's why I need to lose this weight. But he doesn't have to say it. It's just like you can see it with him, like doing deadlifts or doing skull crushers or pull ups, where he's just like I have a problem and I need to confront it. But if you want to confront it with me, that's great. I can spot you, you can spot me. But Bruce Lee's okay. So in Enter the Dragon, Jackie Chan was in the cast. He was one of the stunt doubles, and Bruce Lee accidentally slapped him across the face. And Jackie Chan grabbed his eye and he was like, "Ah, my eye!" And Bruce Lee was like, "Oh, is your face okay?" And he came up to see that there was no blood or anything, because he would hit hard. Like when he wasn't careful, he would really do like direct hits.
Yep.
And he was strong. Like when most people get smacked, they're just like, "Oh, it's nothing." But when you get smacked by someone who's been training for the last 10 years to smack you really hard, it's like your face gets numb because you've just been like smacked by a very strong person, which is Bruce Lee. But Jackie Chan was saying how he got smacked across the face and he was holding his eye, and he's used to getting punched all the time because he used to be a stunt double before an actor, and he would grab his face and he's like, "Ah, my eye." But then Bruce Lee would come up afterwards and say, "Hey, how's your face doing?" And because he was such a huge fan of Bruce Lee, he never really wanted to show that he wasn't actually hurt because he thought that by having someone like Bruce Lee care about him, he was a he was going to become a somebody. But anyways, it was interesting hearing him talk about the story because every time he was on set, Bruce Lee would come up and say, "Hey, how's your face doing?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it's great," because he just liked the attention so much. So I'm trying to say that sometimes when you're not good at something but you're still getting attention for it, you're just reinforcing that behavior because people are giving you attention. So this goes back to what you brought up in the first part about how do you stop someone from doing bad behavior? Well, it's just to not feed it with attention. Because if you
Yep.
feed if like you feed a dog that's biting your hand every time it does it, and you're just like giving it like food afterwards, when it bites you, well, it's like, well, if I bite your hand, you're gonna give me food, so I'm just gonna keep doing it. But if you stop it and you devoid that, you remove your attention from it, then suddenly you don't do it anymore.
Well, that's
And
the thing. The opposite of love is not hate; it's apathy. It's giving somebody no attention, giving it nothing. It goes away because that's what it lives off of. So the bad behavior thrives off the energy or the attention or the time that you're giving it. So don't give it time, don't give it attention. That's why when the haters come on, hit the block button. You don't have to defend your stand. Nothing. Those people, they'll get more upset that you're not giving them your attention because they feel entitled to your time. And when you take that away, they're like, "Wait a minute, what? You're supposed to get mad when I yell at you online, not supposed to block me or ignore me."
well, it's different online because I don't think it's as accountable. Like, I mean, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I think when I say stuff, but I wouldn't say that in person. But sometimes when I do say it in person, I realize how awkward that would be to say it online. It's like a vice versa experience because it's out of context, and someone could take it and say, "You're just this is what you were going through," even though that might not have been what I might, I might not have been. I might not have been thinking that I want to say it that way or say it at all, but then I say it anyways, and that's where I'm still responsible because I said something or I did something and those are dangerous moments because I can find myself in this volatility of what I meant to say as opposed to the way it sounded and came out, and it's part of why I think meditation is really important, because if you meditate about, you know, how these people affect your life, or like, let's say everybody unfriends me on Facebook and I log on and they're like, this is just like zero friends or whatever. Well, I still know people I want to talk to anyway, so that won't affect me anymore. So it's like stuff like this I have to meditate over, because it's not so much about how it happens, it's about how you're going to deal with it, or how you're going to continue on, and you know and you know it's I guess it's not only just dealing with rejection, but it's also dealing with uh, how much is the world going to hurt you before you let it really affect you, because that's what it comes down to. Is like if you have
Well, I think it goes also to the point on being stuck in a mold. You know, if you want to get in shape, but somebody makes fun of you at the gym, you have there's a point where you have to decide: are you more committed to getting in shape and taking ownership of your life, or are you going to run from it because somebody said something you didn't like, and that power is more powerful than your desire to change?
yeah, and that's definitely one of my own struggles when it comes down to, you have to be very careful about who you allow to influence you, because if you don't have a mentor that actually wants not only the best for you, but how to shape and craft yourself to be the best person imaginable, not just available, but you're aligning all your thoughts, your actions, you're challenging yourself, you're pushing yourself as forward as you can. Those are people you should give credit to, that influence your life. But it's easy to get stuck with people that you think should influence you when they're not at all interested about you, or they could care less that something horrible happened or something happened at all to your life. So that's very dangerous. But I think that happens more now because of social media, because you can't tell that the people that you think you're connected to actually care or even know you at all. Because
What's interesting too is you're no longer confined to proximity for the people that can help you or can hurt you. You know, back in the day, it's your local community was where your friends were. Now you can have friends across the globe. You know, back in the day, you know, before all of this, the people who could tell you yes or no, or go or stop, or you're great or you suck, was confined to those who could see you and interact with you on a day-to-day basis in the real world. Well, now that we have social media, the entire globe can be like, oh, you suck. You're terrible. You need to give up. And imagine hearing that, you know, every time you log on, you're like, what the fuck? You know, before, you know, maybe one or two people, but now it's 1 or 2,000 people. Or on the other side, you got all that, you know, support. Hey, cool, you know, you're doing great. Keep going, you know, move forward. Here's some information that might help you. You know, so it really is, you know, a like fuel in the fire. Like it's what people are experiencing on steroids. You know, instead of 1 to 2, it's 1 to 2,000. And you've got to figure out, well, do those 1 to 2,000 strangers have a bigger impact on me, you know, than I do on myself, for good or bad? Or am I going to listen to the people who in my real world who are saying, oh, you should go or you should stop? You know, because both, you might have two people in the real world who say, you suck, you should not go to the gym, you're too fat, just stay fat. And you're like, well, I should listen to those, even though 10,000 people online are telling you, no, go for it. You need to lose the weight. You're going to do great. You know, who do you listen to? The ones that are watching and judging you in the real world, which might cause rejection, the feeling of being ostracized, or all the people that are, you don't even know, but are saying that, hey, you're doing awesome. I wonder if there's any I don't know how you would judge that, but the power of real world support versus online support. I think it's easy for a username to say, hey, good job. But when you have that guy, you know, pat you on the back and like, hey, you know, you did well. Good job getting after it. That real world connection, you know, is what will have a greater influence on what it is you choose to do.
yeah, that's a great question. Well, I could see that only if someone was willing to be doing something with me that was being attacked or criticized at all. Like, here's a good example. Like going to a buddy of mine's funeral and making everybody laugh, doing improvised stand up because I was sad. This was the second time I was invited to a funeral or called to go to a funeral. I stopped going to funerals because someone at the fire department got hit on the side of the highway, and it just, anyways.
That sucks.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It can get very sad. So what I did was I tried to channel that energy, kind of like what Quasimodo did in the Disney film, and hold the woman up. I was trying to hold Blake. I'm not gonna say his name. I was trying to hold my friend up and talk about the sort of experiences I went through that I suffered with him at, because people here were mourning this loss, and I was trying to enhance the loss, but at the same time show the appreciation of the moments that I had to channel that energy of mourning into something that was more playful to me, at least, which was to get people to just to increase their energy and get them to move, or get them to start like cheering and being a little more upbeat. So that's what I did, and I didn't necessarily just do that on purpose. I was really trying to do it so that I could get people to realize that sometimes when life doesn't work because something happens, like you deal with a death or you deal with something that's intense or tragic, you can transform that energy into something that creates a story to turn into like a joke, or to get someone to laugh. I was with my friend's brother who also passed back in 2016, and we were climbing these trees up at Great Falls between Maryland and Virginia, and I got stuck on the back of a tree, and he was with me, and we were over this level 5 rapid. It's like the sort of rapid where if you get like even close enough to it, it just sucks you in, and all these horrible stories come out where you're just gone forever and you're no longer alive. And I was stuck with him on this branch, and we were sitting on this tree, and people were standing on the side of the bank that were looking up at us, because they're like, why the hell did these people go up on this tree? And this was back when I was like 16 or something, and I was looking at him, and I was on the further end of the tree, by the way. I was like the one that I think I was the one that was at the further end. He might remember it differently. I think I was the one at the further end.
We'll get his story next.
Yeah, we were both up above the water, so that's all that matters for the story. But he looks at me, and I look at him, and I'm like, so how do you think we're gonna get down? And he's like, I don't know. I think we should just get up and run. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So we have like this 20-foot tree over the side of a rapid. His solution is to just get up and run down this tree. There's a group of people. There's like 25 people now sitting at the side of the bank looking at us like, how are these people going to get off the side of this semi-rapid tree cliff thing, Majigan? Are they going to have to be helicoptered out? Or are they going to just jump in the water and just hope they can swim back, even though it's like it's going to suck us up? And
you're toast.
So he looks at me, I look at him, and he just gets up and just straight up runs straight down this log over this water. And I get up and I'm running with him. And when we both jump down and stuff, the whole crowd disperses. Like no one wanted to hear exactly how we figured out how to do it. They just all start to get. It's almost like they were afraid of what just happened. And I look at him. He looks at me, and he's like, at least that's going to be a great story to tell our grandkids. And I remember how funny that was, because the whole moment was terrifying, and it was one of those moments where you could have died, and you realize you could have died, but then at the same time, someone gets you to laugh enough so that you realize it was okay, and that you're not dead, and that you learn something from it, which is don't climb over waterfalls, or don't
lesson learned.
Don't climb over rapids without knowing how to get off the side of where you're climbing from, because it's scary once you realize, like, how do you get down? You climb up and you're like, oh, this is a great view, and then you realize you're
it's like cliffhanger. You just got to jump, figure it out.
Yeah, maybe that's why maybe that's why that has something to do with my heights. That
probably didn't help.
Probably didn't help at all. But yeah,
I like your point on fear or judgment or any of these emotions that an individual can experience. You choose whether it's fuel or an anchor. You have that power to say, hey, all this hate that's coming in, I'm going to use that I'm going to channel it. And that's going to fuel me and energize me to go even further. I'm not going to let it bring me down. I'm scared of this thing. This thing is sad. I don't want to do that thing. It's hard. You know what? That's what's going to make me do it even better. I'm going to choose to take it and just totally change the type of energy it is, because you have that ability. When you receive energy, you can choose what does it become. You process it to fuel or an anchor. You decide. And that strength is, I think a lot of people, they don't realize that they have that power, because they're told, if you feel this, you're supposed to do that. Well, you can phase you going to a funeral and turn that to something to charge you, to be like, what, I'm going to turn this to positive vibes. I'm not going to let it bring me down and just put me into a dark world. I'm going to use it as fuel to be brighter and shine a light that can help others in the dark world.
It's a funny story about that. So before I'm about to go to the funeral, I'm with another player of mine that we were both on the same rugby team, and I see him take drugs. It was like the first time when you go to school and people are like, don't take drugs. It was like the first time I saw it happen in person. I was just like, why are you doing this? And he's like, because I don't want to. This goes back to the fire and not wanting to feel your feelings, because he was sadder than I was, and I was just like, fine. It's, I still love the guy, but that threw me off even more, because I'm not. I was just like, dude, seriously? He's like, yeah, I gotta give a speech. I gotta give a talk to like 400 people at a funeral. I'm not gonna do it sober. Like, fuck that. So, so, so I'm in the car with him, and I'm like in a depressed state, because I gotta go. I gotta say something, and I think this is part of why I didn't want to go to funerals anymore, because it's just like, I know how they're set up, but anyways, to make a long, interesting story short, I was using humor so that I could point out how, if I'm not gonna numb myself, then I want to remember the physical brutality of playing with this guy, because this guy was the strongest player I ever played against. I mean, you talk about rhinos, that's exactly who he was as a rhino. If he lowered his center of body weight and you ran at him, he would grab your body and like body slam you to the ground. But he was so small that you never thought he could do it. So if you were playing with him, you would think that he wouldn't do it, because even when he would practice, he would hit so hard. His practice hits were like hitting a brick wall. That's how hard he would hit. He would just sit down, lower his back, and he would grab you by wrapping you, and he would just slam you down like a body slam. But he would do it legally, so the whole thing was legal, but it was like going into a wrestling match at the same time.
But you know what though? You're talking about this
That's
guy like a rhino, and you're talking like the great feats of strength, but he's the one who's numbing himself. You know, so
uh
it's incredible
oh
how people are strong and weak in certain areas.
yeah, no, it's yeah, you could, and this goes back to self-criticism and suicide. It's the same thing. Like, the ultimate form of self-criticism is taking your own life, because you're taking the very thing you have control over, and you're saying, why bother, it's over with. Like, I choose when it ends, and it ends now, and there's no more growth. I mean, you still grow. I mean, you might come back as a tree, just so that you have to sit down with yourself for the next 100 years and really process what's going on. But the energy is transmuted to something else. It's not like we all live forever in that sense, because we just become something different. This goes back to the deer on the side of the road. It's gonna come back. Maybe not as a deer. Maybe something like it. Maybe it's, I don't. I can't go down that right now. But the thing that's fascinating about the ability to if you look up the Lu Jung, it's a Buddhist text, and one of the things about it that's really interesting is it's sitting with the fire, and it's breathing in what you don't want and breathing out what you do, like a tree does with oxygen and carbon. It's essentially the epitome of being a tree as a person, because first off, you don't say anything, because you listen, and then you respond with removal of suffering. So in the case of a tree, it's taking the carbon and turning it into oxygen. But you do that as a living person with people around you. So you energize them to the max. So it's like taking the five Tibetans, taking the Lu Jung, and every time someone's suffering through something, you take on that suffering by acknowledging it. You don't take away the burden of it, because they have to learn the lesson from what the suffering's teaching them. But you breathe in the suffering that they're taking, and you energize them with the solution. Like, that's like the carbon and the oxygen example with the tree. Uh, and you do that as a living individual. So no matter where you go, you're uplifting and energizing absolutely everything, and you're alleviating as much suffering as you can. But you're feeding in the best of yourself to every experience you're presented with, so that you're never avoiding reality. You're embracing it, but you're doing it in a way that's founded on compassion without wanting
Well,
anything
it's on your
back.
terms
You
too,
don't do
and
it.
it's almost like you're not being
Uh,
given the fuel; you're creating the fuel. It's coming in, and you're choosing this is
exactly.
going to charge me up. And when you should be like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm running out of energy, it's like the infinite loop. You can continue to keep like you're not going to run out of energy because you take it in, you process it, you send it out. Kind of like like I was saying, fuel or anchor. When that comes in, you choose: is this something that's going to stay carbon and bring me down, or is it going to turn to oxygen and bring me up? With the tree analogy. So I completely agree. I mean, you can take it in and you can choose how you respond. That's why people who like a lot of guys who hit me up, oh, my family's toxic, my friends are toxic. They're only toxic if you allow them to be toxic. Their
It,
existence and the presence in your life, you choose how it impacts you.
it's all gift. Like, that's the thing about the harshest things about life, is that no matter what we go. One of my favorite scenes is in the movie Forgiveness, about Desmond Tutu, the Forgiveness Project with the South African apartheid movement. There's a scene where they change the prison rules, because he's trying to talk to this guy who took the life of this young girl, and the mother wants to find out what happened to her story. And Desmond Tutu comes to visit this guy in the prison, and the prison guard changes the entire rules of engagement of going to see prisoners. And so Desmond Tutu takes a 2-hour drive to come see this prisoner, because he wants to listen to what the prisoner has to say. And the guard changes the rules. So Desmond Tutu shows up, and the guard's like, "Ha! ha, I just screwed you over. We changed the rules, and now you can't see this prisoner. And the first response that Desmond Tutu had, it's in this film Forgiveness. It's the same guy that did The Mission back in 1987, which is another one of my favorite films ever made because of the crucifixion and the waterfall scene. But uh, in this scene, Desmond Tutu's first response is played by Forrest Whitaker, who's a great actor. He says, "No, no, no! I'm so happy I got to see you. Just by coming to see you, it made my day." And he takes all the negative like supremacist energy of like I'm so right because I choose to with my ideology, and he transmutes it through kindness. And you can see how the guy is totally unprepared for that, where he thinks he's going to be like fought back against, but instead he's embraced with this abundance of love all at once. That he's just like, oh man, like I didn't realize people can do that as humans. It's fascinating because you realize that no matter what happens to you, the way your attitude is matters more than whatever it is. So once you understand that and you have options in how you respond, because you can choose to resent people or or despise them or call them names and stuff, but you can also choose to appreciate them for teaching you lessons about what you haven't done for yourself, which is eternal. So it's not momentary. It's appreciating the suffering that they're showing you, especially by getting rejected and being despised or being attacked. Those are great lessons because those lessons provide you with feedback on all the things that you may have overlooked or that you may have not paid attention to, because they're paying attention to those smallest things and you're not, and they're calling you out on it. And it's like, who else does that? Like sometimes even our closest intimate people don't even do that for us. And there's something important about having that presented to you so that you realize, you know, this is still appreciated, even though it's not like it's welcomed, but it's still
Well, I think that's why it's best when you put it out. You allow, because those closest to you, they'll overlook it. They'll not bring the thing up because they care about you or they think that'll hurt your feelings or something like that. Where these other people, they don't care. It's just left or right, right or wrong, black or white, and they'll tell you which side you land on. So it's almost beneficial to have people who aren't close to you judging you, because they're the ones who will keep it real. They're the ones who will tell you the raw truth as opposed to what they think you want to hear.
Yeah, I actually thought that was a funny scene in uh, I just go back to Batman and Joker because it's like they hate each other or they just play with each other. Um, when the Joker's hanging off the roof, he's like, you and me are gonna do this for a long, long time, and but it's like that same energy. It's like it looks like they're fighting, but they're really sparring with each other because they don't want to kill each other. They feed off each other's energy because one gives attention to the other, and you can see how it's a lost cause because they say they disagree with each other, but it's like they're making some form of a connection while they're fighting. So as bad as the Joker is, it's not like Batman wants to really kill him because it's like he's feeding off that need to be like that righteous guy that's saving the city of Gotham, and he can't give that up. It's like his tragedy is not giving up the fact that he doesn't have control over his mother. But that just makes me think of Ryan
Yeah.
Stone's Batman origin story. And I always think that's a great way to put it, because what happens when you get better? Do you still go back to the things that hurt you in the past? Because if it becomes like a staple point of who you are, like I'm Oprah, therefore I can broadcast the tragedy of the world and people listen because I'm Oprah. It's like, well, that's great, but then what happens when you're finally happy? Like, do you broadcast that too? Because no one pays attention to that stuff. It's like you have to amplify that drama and make rile people up so that they can say this is just and this isn't just, or it's another reason why that scene with Quasimodo is so powerful, because he doesn't do it for the drama. He does it for the sake of it being like a way for him to express this complete love to this woman that cares about him, and he doesn't do it because of other people. He does it just because he's saying, I'm banished to this temple. It's like my body has Quasi because I have a hunchback, but this cathedral represents love, and she represents that to me. And the name of the cathedral is My Lady, so she represents My Lady, and I want the world to see this because it's more about me showing myself to the world as a flawed person and not about the world caring about me, because it doesn't. But I'm presenting this back to the world as a result of my choice to use that energy for positive and less for inducing hatred or saying how you don't look like me, so I hate you. And it for a scene that was like less than 3 minutes, it really did a better job at conveying architecture as beauty and as the importance of like religion, symbolism and religion and stuff and culture, because it makes people feel connected, and that feeling can get you through some really dark spots, even if it's made up or if it doesn't exist. It's just like that. The symbolism of faith is more important for the individual than for the faith itself. And that's Quasimodo. I mean, as a person,
Right.
that's his response to being neglected or rejected, or people throwing food at him, or or people treating you horribly, is you take that all in and you still find a way to love someone back, even though it doesn't might not it might not be meaningful, because people are just like, well, we're going to forget you in the next 100 years. And it's like, well, okay, fine. Well, someone writes a story that's made up, but still, the symbolism with personhood and art and the violence too. Like the more angry someone is, like with you, I guess you use Twitter more than I do. When people come after you because you share a story about how you handle your own dynamic with your family, and how that's you and that's your story and that belongs to you, and that's something you're choosing to share with the world, and the world's saying, well, that doesn't fit our narrative, or you don't fit in our box anymore. um we're angry at that. Like, how dare you challenge our version of the way reality is. It's something that I think everyone should try at least once in their life, where you challenge people's perceptions of who you are, and they hate you for it because they realize that you're growing and you're showing them there's a possibility of change, and they realize, well, it's up to me to get better as well. Like, I gotta get my own stuff going. So I think it's necessity. There's like some level of discomfort or some level of stress, so that all your ideas are constantly being played out, and you're challenged, and you're growing with those challenges, but you're not imposing those challenges on the world. You're sharing enough of it so that uh, it's more about the fact that it's the work that's being done, and not about the call out to it.
Well, when we were talking about Forrest Whitaker, telling that guard, "Hey, it's good to see you," even though I can't see anybody else, it made me
Yeah.
think of Mr. Rogers and Bob Ross. When you think of those two men, they're like the most kindred souls. And they weren't out pushing these agendas just by
Oh,
being these calm and steady forces. They became huge.
yeah.
Look, we're talking about them right now.
Yeah, someone should look up Mr. Rogers going up to the Congress for public funding. That's like the most awesome.
100%.
That to me is like, what if you want to see someone who's not only a decent person but who has the ability to stand up in front of politics, and it's like anti SJW, because here's what he did. First off, he never yelled. He didn't have a protest sign. He stood up and he said, if you guys want to have your kids be semi decent and you want to cut funding off this, it's gonna challenge the way your kids grow up in the world. And he didn't have to scream or curse or fight. He just expressed that there's a document, something that Abraham Lincoln did in politics, or Supreme Court justice between Ruth Ginsburg and Scalia. But the thing is that when he was talking in front of Congress, not only was he ballsy about this, but he said, "Look, these are the consequences to your social ignorance, and I'm protesting you." It's the same thing you would do because you're American, by protesting something you disagree with. But the way he went about it was extremely decent, which is what I'm trying to get to. Is that his decency before his protest was so well put together that he forced the crowd. I mean, the Congress guy that responds to him said, "Look, I agree with you. You get the funding because of how awesome it was." Like, it's like he didn't even have to fight like a lawyer. He just
And
said,
that guy
"Well,
was giving him an attitude in the beginning. You could
yeah,
see he kind
yeah,
of had like a little tood going when they
yeah."
first started. And then Rogers got to speak and he was like, "Oh, okay." And it's one of those things where he was too normal for them to say anything negative. He's too average. He's too just kind for you to be like, "Oh, I can't be a dick to this guy."
Yeah, and the thing too is that Mr. Rogers, I think someone played a prank on him once. I was listening to this TV caster dude, the TV production assistant. You know how Mr. Rogers would change his shoes when he was talking to the audience? Well, one time this guy put the same shoes he puts on in the box where he takes off his shoes. So on TV, you see him like putting on his shoes that he just put back in the box, because he, like, the guy changed the shoes overnight, and because he was used to coming in with his shoes that he was wearing in the morning for the intro, and then taking off his shoes. So I thought that was the coolest prank, because as Mr. Rogers is doing it, he looks up and he starts laughing, because he's just like, "I'm putting on my shoes."
You got me.
Yeah. It was the coolest thing, because you realize that even he was trying to disrupt his routine, because every morning he would come on and just tie his shoes. But then when someone introduced like a lot of friction in his life, he actually embraced it, as opposed to like angry at it, because you could see that he was trying to live what he said. Because when 9/11 happened, I remember that some girl was asking him about death, or about the fish that he had in the fish tank, because he would feed the fish tank, and he actually responded to it the next episode. So it's like he really cared about how kids, to learn about death, and could learn
Yep.
about and and to me, it's like it goes back to like the fire thing, where you have to sit with that fire, that those questions that are uncomfortable, and when you're called out on it, you're just like, yeah, this has to be dealt with. But you know,
It's uncomfortable, but
I'll
you're
do
like,
it.
"Okay, we're gonna get there." Like it's okay
I'll do
to
it.
talk about uncomfortable things.
Yeah, and there's something that was it's something that's really hard to do with yourself, is to sit through that fire, when all your insecurities and all your problems in life come back to you, and what are you doing to deal with them? It's like if you know that you're struggling and you're failing, but you're doing the best you can, that's always going to be enough, because it's so personal with you and God that it has nothing to do with the outside world. That's part of why I do these runs, is because it's my way of talking about my my life of struggle and the stuff I haven't accomplished yet and all this other stuff. It's like I'm talking to a part of myself that's non-judgmental, but that doesn't involve uh the it's like a long prayer with God. It's an interreligious Mr. Rogers as well as Desmond Tutu is that they care so much about giving the best of what humanity is possible of, and they overlook all the things that we call each other out on as far as the negative things we also can do to each other. So that's hard to stay at. You know, it's there's a level of intensity and energy that's infusing, but being around people that are not only good for you but that want the best for you and want you to be better, those are the sort of people that make the world work, like as far as fighting off the darkness.
I think that's a
It's hard.
universally recognized thing as well. I remember a story where somebody robbed Mr. Rogers' car, and when they found out from the newspaper that that's whose car it was, the thieves returned it, saying, "Had we known it was his, we never would have touched it." Because like they're like, this is a good man, and it's so rare for someone to stay at that level, like you were saying, that they came back like, I don't want to hurt the guy who's doing the right thing, you know, the one who can stay at that level of getting over the little bullshit that we focus on and focusing on things that actually matter.
That's funny that you say that, because I was thinking of this rock band. It's Chevelle. They're from Chicago. They're actually a band. They're like a family as a band. Like all brothers are in the same band, which makes it even cooler because they're their music is it's one of my favorite songs is "Letter to a Thief" by Chevelle, and the reason why is because someone stole their guitar and all their stuff in their van, and they wrote the song as a letter to the person who stole it. But I won't give anything else away. But it was kind of a way to say, like, we understand why you did it, but we're not gonna be we're not going to be angry with you anymore. Like we're gonna move on. But this is to you as a response to that. Like I lost my favorite guitar. It's like that possessiveness where it's like, dude, I wrote my whole career was based off this one guitar, and now I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And I miss that
And now you got to
guitar.
say, is it the guitar or is it me? You know, and that's a learning moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to me, another reason I like that song so much is because the chorus is so intense. It's like the whole song is like, I'm angry, I'm pissed. It's like acknowledging everything that happens when you lose something, like lose your house, you lose your wife, and one song, and then it's just like, okay, all right, but I can choose with my attitude how to handle this, and I'm angry with you, and I needed you to know that anger because I lost my favorite guitar, and you really upset me. Like that was my favorite freaking guitar, and you took it, and I don't have that guitar anymore. So this is to tell you I'll move on. But if you see
And
that
you know how
guitar,
rare that is to actually
yes,
acknowledge a negative emotion, like acknowledge, yeah, I am pissed, but that's okay because that's a part of humanity. That's a part of being a person. Yeah, I did like that thing, but now I've got to learn, you know, how to get over it not having being that guitar, but being a different guitar, and the fact that it's me who makes the music, not the guitar making me make the music. You know, Jocko Willink has a great. It's like I don't know if it's a speech or a clip that they put together, but it's where he always says good. He's like, all right, this happened to me. Good. Now I can learn that. This bad thing happened to me. Good. It allowed me to do that. It's just finding a way to, all right, yeah, I'm pissed off. Good. I can now just learn, okay, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be, you know, high. It's okay to be low because that's what we feel. That's what we are as humans. But we aren't that thing. It's just something we experience, we handle, we recognize, we move on.
I just found it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to this because it seems really inspirational.
The
Oh,
Jocko Willink
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Someone put up a YouTube
Oh, dude,
clip
it's awesome.
about.
Actually, it was Josh from FOE that brought it to my attention, and it was kick ass. I listened to it on the way to work, and I'm just at work. I'm like, good. I was like, well, what's my thing? Because I can't steal his. Like, you know, my thing is, okay, this happened. Okay, what are we gonna do with it? Can't copy him, so I'm gonna have shirts to say, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I struggle with that too. I say things that I think are coming from me, but they're coming from like Atomic Habits or a book I'm reading, and I forget to give credit to where it is. Everything I say isn't from me. It's I'm just borrowing like 1,000 different things from other people. So if I've said something that someone else created and brought it up, call it out to my attention too. Um, and But yeah, I actually struggle with citing people too. I should mention that, where I read like a book and then I forget that the book was written by I forget the credit. Like I remember the name of the book, but I then forget to give credit to the writer who wrote the book, and that's something I'm frustrated with because of sharing things online and making sure people get credit for what I'm sharing. That's tradition. But hopefully after this, it's like, yeah, I said it on. There's footage of me saying this too. So,
I can reference the video point where I can quote myself.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a lawyer about it too, because sometimes I'm worried, like when I share things, I'm just like, just making sure, because I do get confused sometimes with like crediting things on the internet and making sure that the people get acknowledged for it. But I don't know. I mean, like sometimes I'm worried of losing things, so I try to like save things that I mean, that's my possessiveness too. That's another reason why going on like an internet fast is important. Where
Yeah.
like I don't for me, I just install all my apps during the day. So the only one I have is Slack because of the FOE and stuff. So that one I keep open, but everything else I pretty much just install. And then I try to check it for less than 5 minutes. So I time myself, and then I fracture my email out. So I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna check everything for less than 5 minutes, and I try to limit all social media down to like, for now, I don't, I log out of everything too, so that I have to give myself extra friction before I get on it, because otherwise I get sucked into it. And that's something that it still keeps, I still go on the internet. It puts like
Well, it's intentional.
yeah,
There's a reason. Instead of just existing there, you're going on for a purpose. And even if that purpose is just to do a quick catch up on what's going on.
Yeah. So I think the only site I've been using a lot is Reddit right now. So that's a like I'm on a veterans subreddit because there's this film called Vietnam: The Reconciliation. You can see it on Snag Films. It's a great film. It's about these vets that go back to where they were fighting in Vietnam, and they bike through all the cities and stuff, and they get to see all the after effects. And this one guy is getting this haircut by this dude at this he's getting this haircut, and he called in a fire strike, and this kid has burned eyes, and he's like, so when did you get this when did you become blind? And the kid says when he was like 6, the same year that Vietnam started. And he's like, what happened? He's like, well, I was in this rice field and I was playing with my friend, and suddenly this napalm bomb drops, and I can't, that's the last thing I remember was just my eyes flashing shut. And when you see the film and you see this guy's reaction, because he remembers he was the one who called that strike in, it's just like he reaches up and he's like, I'm sorry, because that was me. And you get to see like this guy he's just like, oh, and they're connecting on screen and stuff, and it's interesting because they're both like aware of each other's pain and suffering, because like one person doesn't have any anger and resentment, and the other person is just like, I was a soldier fighting this conflict that I wasn't sure how I fit in, and you know what I agreed on, and you get to see that interaction, and I thought that was really cool. So I've always been trying to figure out how to find this file, and finally I found it. So I've been geeked out by it.
Dude, that sounds pretty powerful.
Yeah, if you look it up, it's called Vietnam: The Reconciliation. It's on Snag Films, but it's definitely one of my. I mean, if you want to see the coolness of serving in the military and then seeing the consequences of stuff that goes wrong, that's not wrong. Okay, I'm not. That sounds as a judgment. I'm just gonna say it's the after effects.
Yep.
The after effects of one consequence or one choice to another, that you get to see like a 3 generational experience through bicycling in Vietnam. And I like biking in general, but that's a very compassionate film about, first of all, it's fighting for your country, but it's also taking responsibility for what your country does when it goes away. And you're still there with the person in front of them saying, you know, that was me. I'm the one responsible for my actions. That was my responsibility.
Yep. And here's the ripples from that have gone on.
Yeah. So I'm all about that. Like anytime you're responsible for your choices, you make the right choices because there's people looking at you saying, like, this affects me just as much as it affects you. And you realize, well, if I make better choices, then it affects you better and me better. And we all grow together. And it's cooperative. Living. So
It also brings back the aspect of humanity to where your choice has consequences, and the things you do, good or bad, things happen because of that, by what you do. And you can say, great choices that you make might lead to others making great choices. Negative choices, might lead to negative. And now with this example in Vietnam, I mean, shit happens in war. Like, war is terrible. But if we take it from that niche of war, Vietnam, and bring it to the global aspect of what we're facing as a society, the things you do, the things you say, how you interact with people, that echoes. What you said online might impact somebody a month from now. Their life might be different, better or worse, because of an action you took or a phrase you decided to say to them.
That's the idea, but sometimes I terrify myself because I'm thinking that I say things out of context, and then I might actually be hurting people, even though I'm thinking I'm helping them, because I'm in a tough spot, and my thoughts are bleeding through, and I might say something one way, but it might come off something different to somebody else. So that's why I was kind of like, I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to sound. I'm not sure I'm going to go back and watch this, but it's like I'm self-conscious about my own issues, and when they come up, it's like I still have to live with those issues. So
yeah.
So I suppose it's like reminding yourself that you have those issues and you have to change, or you channel that energy into small pieces of change, like in the Atomic Habits. But you do it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you can just do your best, and like you said, there's something to that. Like, I might say something and it destroys a relationship where I'm trying to like help it, but like I gave you the best tools I could, and if something bad happened, that was never the intent,
Yeah, that's the stuff I'm thinking about. Was stuff I say I find could be funny sometimes, but someone else could. Okay, a buddy of mine named Eric. I do boxing with him, and I made a comment about concussions, and he was so pissed at me. He was just like, "That's the most disrespectful thing someone's ever said to me," and I'm gonna have to punch you in the face. No, he wasn't. He wasn't. He wasn't. He was pissed. Like, physically, he was disrespected, and I did disrespect him. I made a comment about a concussion that I wasn't thinking about, and he was pissed. And Eric could probably knock me out with one hit. I've been training with him for the last month, and the last time we spoke, you said this side comment about concussions, and that was the most disrespectful thing someone's ever said to me. And you're not in a position to say that. You have no authority over calling me out on that. Like, how dare you bring that up? And it was great because I realized, first off, I was wrong because I shouldn't have said that. That was disrespectful, and that was uncalled for. So that was my fault. But then the fact that he called me out on it, he also reminded me that there's some things you don't say to people. Like, you just don't say that. And if they're really good at what they do and you piss them off, like a professional boxer who happens to be sitting next to you with gloves on, you should probably not say that, because it's like, what's holding them back from just punching you across the face? It's like you're setting yourself up to be in a state of pain because you're not aware of your environment. So he sat down with me and we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, "Don't that's not cool. You don't say that. You're not." And the way he went about it was not just it didn't just change me, but it reminded me that when I say humorous things, I got to prepare people for that, because if something I might say that's funny that I just say out loud could come off like it did with Eric about the concussion thing, and he just like, "Yo, like don't ever do that again, like, ever. This is not our relationship. Like, this is not a give and take. You ask for my help, you say something that's not only insulting to me, but that's uncalled for, and I'm not going to tolerate that at all, ever." And I really like that, because first off, like, he could have just left and said, like, "Fuck this guy. I'm not putting up with this at all," which would have been totally his prerogative. But the thing that was interesting about it too is that he demonstrated to me that it's very important to respect people in the context in which your relationship is with them, because it's life's not like right here you're calling me by a pen name, and I'm calling you by a pen name, and maybe that's not our real names, because I'm not sure if we're supposed to keep that also as like a thing, but see, that's still part of the relationship. So it was interesting because I think I heard Rolo talk about this too in one of his podcasts like 2 episodes or 3 episodes ago, about the dynamic of that relationship and how the way you call someone is just as important as the presence you provide and stuff like that. And that really reminded me of how in the real world, part of having real relationships with people, which is hard to do on social media because of the way it's set up, is that there's boundaries involved, and there's work that goes into making those relationships functional. And part of that work is realizing that those relationships, the more they matter, the more you present yourself to those things, and you grow from making mistakes. And if those mistakes are enough to teach you to change, then the healthier they are. Because it was just, for me, it was a wake up call of how
Well,
my
no, it's
feelings
important too. I mean, not only did you see the boundary, but it's kind of like a lava lamp.
that's
Like, even though it's always
that's
changing, you are together and contained in that one bubble at that time. So our conversation here, if we're not being recorded, we're using our first names together, our actual first names, and that the whole dynamic changes, even though it's the same thing happening. But in this context, with the recording, we have to change. All right, here's the new boundaries, and you kind of just understand that over time by sometimes you cross them, sometimes it's just outright told to you, like, hey, here's the line. If you can come up to it, just don't cross it. So sometimes it's stated beforehand instead of after the fact.
yeah. And one of the things about and this goes back to like that cathedral and the boundaries of the walls. And I was listening to this trauma therapist talk 2 days ago about how when you go through trauma in your life, and if it's imputed on your body as a child, you think it's your body's fault. So it's like you have disgust for your inner body. And I was looking at the cathedral and boundaries, and one one thing that came up to me was that it's like you have to reestablish your connection to your own body to somebody else's, and you have to, part of recovering from harsh things in life is seeing to how you started with your relationship to yourself. So I think when Eric called me out on that comment about the concussion, one thing he reminded me was that um, I can say a lot of stupid stuff, and I can say it in a way where I think that it's just supposed to be forgotten. And he's just like sitting there looking at me. He's like, I can remember 3 times you said this, and I had my fist clenched and stuff, and I was just getting ready to sock you in the face. And I just remember when he was saying that to me, it's like, if you're not aware of the things you're not doing well, and someone doesn't remind you of that, you're not gonna have a satisfying life, because people don't want to be around someone, first off, that doesn't change them, at least for the better, but also tolerate anything that like in his point is disrespectful. So calling someone out on something that they find to be disrespectful, it's just as important as remembering that there's a time and place for things, but that in order for you to be a better person, you have to respect other people's that relationship. So that was a really that was a really resilient experience, because I actually realized first off that he could hit me, and he could also just walk away and say, yeah, I'm doing that because you did what you did.
Well, it's
But
also
also
important that people share their boundaries. And that's why people who are conflict averse, people don't know what they don't know. So if you don't let them know, hey, this bothers me, the relationship won't be as good as it could be. How do you just let them know, hey, stop doing that? Because they
yeah,
don't know they're doing it.
yeah, that's something else he told me, which is where he's like, I didn't tell you this beforehand, but we were meditating and you called me out on that I was at a meditation. That's where I met Eric, because he's a professional boxer, and he's really good at what he does. Really good at what he does. He's fighting on the 11th of May, and I said something about it because my friend Ian had a concussion in rugby, and I think I might have said something offhand. It came off as an insult to him, which is all that matters, is that he took it as an insult. It doesn't matter that I meant it as a. So I'm listening to him tell me this, and he's just like, "Look, if you ever say that again, like this, I'm not. This isn't like a. This isn't something I'm going to tolerate. This is over. Like, I'm not gonna. I could punch
Yep.
you in the face. I could
Yep.
punch you in the. I could punch you in the face. I'm not going to, but that's never going to happen again. If it does, it's like, yeah, see, that's on me, because he told me, don't say that. I didn't take it the way you thought I did. Don't ever do that again. And so it was that's like the most recent for me. That was one of those burning the fires in the most uncomfortable position I can, because imagine sitting in a car, or actually I think we were sitting outside, because he ended up getting food at 7-Eleven, but we were sitting outside, and he looks at me, and like, imagine a guy that's like 6'1", who's nothing but muscle. He's no inch of fat on his body at all, and he's looking at you, intently staring at you, and he's saying, like, okay, first you disrespected me, and there's a possibility I could actually use violence right now in this moment. And you're not trying to shy away from it, but you're like, oh yeah, I I'm not gonna
I
do that again.
acknowledge this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not gonna do it again. I'm not gonna do it again. I don't want to do it again. And I see, I really appreciate, because he showed me that there's some things that you might not realize that are hurting someone else, that when you realize it, you stop doing it, because what you think is good or decent to somebody else might be offensive. And this is what I'm struggling with the internet, is part of why I just sometimes I try to create discussions more than discomfort. But anyone can take anything they want off the internet their own way. So it's like, how do you cultivate a conversation but still grow without having to like hurt each other before you can actually talk about what's the problem, or what's to change, or what could change.
It doesn't help that text does not convey tone very well.
Text? Oh, well, the cool thing about text, though, is when you're actually with him in person, that's the thing, though, is that he's so tall. It's like you're
Not text, man. Text. Text does not convey tone. If I shoot you a text message, you don't know if I'm sarcastic. Yeah, text, he conveys tone. That southern tone. Dropping the bass.
Yeah, no, yeah, no. Okay. Text messaging. Yeah, so that's the thing, too, is with my business I text people to remind them of things that I'm trying to set up, like appointments and stuff. But I prefer calling people because I can hear like where they're at before I can say something. So I use the phone more than I text things or email in general. I've noticed that when I send things, I prefer calling people because I can hear their state. So if they're busy doing something, I just say, hey, we'll talk later because it looks like you're delivering groceries or something. But if I text someone, I assume they're going to answer because they should be doing the same thing I'm doing at the moment that I'm texting them when they're driving a car, or they're with their kids doing something. So yeah, that's another realization is not everybody's doing what you think they're doing when you're trying to reach them. So they might have their own thing going on, but all these ideas like sit in your head about why they're not responding.
Right. You start to build what is happening instead of what's actually happening.
Busy and stuff.
All right, Rugby. Unfortunately, this has to come to an end, and I have to start the day with the family. This is literally the longest podcast and conversation I've had, and it's dude, I could probably go another 3 hours. We broke the 3-hour mark.
Nice. Oh wow.
No, I like it. Doesn't matter.
Nice.
It's a high score, man. I'll take it. I'll go down with it. So, do you have any final comments you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah. Well, it's finding things that I would say take time out of your day, maybe an hour to journal and to write out what you want out of life, and find mentors that are really good at what they do that you can get attention from that can help you along that path. Because someone said about how the so-called manosphere is just a bunch of coaches now that are selling their own courses and stuff, and that made me think about how if you find good mentors that could be coaches as well, that have your same goals in mind and that have done something that you're interested in doing, that mentorship is invaluable. So if you can give that to yourself today, wherever you are in life, and find a way to reach out to those people that have done what you're interested in doing, or if they haven't done it yet, find ways that you can make the own field up for yourself. I would say that would be a good goal for the day, is to cultivate not just excellence, but cultivate really awesome characteristics that challenge what you're comfortable with so far. And yeah, I can get better at.
It's a final closing statement. It's a solid one.
Yeah. So yeah, mentorships.
All right. For those who've listened, this is the end of episode 4 of the Morning Brew. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, spread the word, do what you got to do. Be sure to support the show's sponsor, Ground Shark Coffee. TFA 10 gets you 10% off your order. Link is below. Have a great weekend, gentlemen. Rugby, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, go Nick.